We're ready to go. All right.
All right, so it is 6:30, so we're going to go ahead and begin our Planning Commission meeting. So we'll go ahead and open the meeting at 6:30. We'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have to say it's the first time in a long time with no video lag
Yeah.
with everybody at home. So that was
Yes,
fun.
nice to see you again, Eva.
Yes, seeing everybody in person is wonderful. Quick reminder, if you plan on speaking tonight, we do have a sign-in sheet back there. We would love you guys to sign in so we can have that for part of our public record. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Angela for our roll call of commissioners.
Okay. Commissioner Wood? Commissioner Melter?
Here.
Commissioner Wolthius? Absent. Commissioner Parker?
Here.
Commissioner Stevens is absent. Commissioner Journey?
Present.
And Commissioner Lohman?
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum.
All right, so at this point in our meeting agenda, this is the time, if anybody has anything to address the council with that is not on our agenda for this evening, this would be the time to do so. We don't have anybody online, is that correct? Okay. All right, so we'll move on from there to our meeting minutes from our last meeting. Do any of the commissioners have anything they'd like to change? Alter, typos?
I was missing. I'm missing from the roll call vote.
Okay. On the January, it says Laura Wood on there, present.
And approving the meeting minutes.
Oh, you are.
Oh, yep.
Sorry. Okay, I see what you're saying. All right, I will fix that. Thank you.
Anybody else have any observations or changes in regards to the minutes?
I would move to approve the January 6, 2022 minutes as corrected.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Go to Angela for our roll call vote.
Commissioner Lohman?
Yes.
Commissioner Journey?
Yes.
Commissioner Parker?
Yes.
Commissioner Melcher?
Yes.
And Commissioner Wood?
Yes.
All right, with that, we'll open up our public hearings for tonight. We're going to go slightly out of order in order to group a couple of them together. So we're going to start with opening the public hearing for application CU 2201 at, sorry, my glasses fogged up, 6:33. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to allow for a property line adjustments of a public school in a residential zone. In an R2 zone, the following uses and their accessory uses may be permitted subject to the provision of chapter 17.80. A use permitted as an accessory use. Sorry, I lost my spot. Maybe public school and private schools offering curricula similar to a public school, modifications to approved plans and developments and transfers, proposed changes that do not meet above criteria in sections A of the development and transfers. Proposed changes do not meet the criteria shall be processed as a new application, Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.80.060B. Subject properties are in the residential high density R2 and residential low density R1 zones. Conditional use application CU 2201 is pending approval of a property line adjustment application PLA 2201, PLA 2202, and PLA 2203. Applications 01, 02, and 03 were approved by the Community and Economic Development Director on January 24th. The appeal period ends at 5 p.m. on February 5th, 2022. So the applicable substantive criteria are listed in the staff report. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the criteria described or other criteria in the plan or land use regulation which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision makers and the party an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes the appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. So, go going crazy with her. What, Blair? Greenland? I think it's out of our jurisdiction. That's right. All right, so we will go ahead and work on our declarations by the commission. Do any of the commissioners have any personal bias in regard to this application? Okay, any conflicts of interest?
You can type in the address. Okay.
Any ex parte
You can play.
information? All right, so this time I'll go ahead and hand it over to Angela for our staff report.
Okay, here, we have a lot to get through. Fast. Any point staff report for conditional use application 22-01. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to allow for a property line adjustment of public school in a residential zone. The subject properties are in the residential high density R2 and residential low density R1 zones. No development is planned with this application. The floodplain, based on the review of the FEMA flood insurance rate map panel 41043C0913G dated September 29th, 2010, the subject property is not in the special flood hazard area. Based on the ArcGIS map, the subject property is in the Ames Creek 500-year floodplain. Wetlands, based on the review of the City of Sweet Home local wetland inventory and a review of the National Wetland Inventory map, the subject property does not contain inventoried wetlands. The subject properties have frontage and access along Long Street and 18th Avenue. The subject properties have access to city water and sewer services in Long Street and 18th Avenue. So for criteria, the request complies with the requirements of the underlying zone or overlay zone, city code, state and federal laws. For this application to comply with all applicable city and state and federal laws, this application may require additional permits. If this application is approved, staff recommends a condition of approval that prior to operation, the applicant shall obtain all required local, state, and federal permits. The applicant shall submit copies of required permits and licenses to the Sweet Home Community and Economic Development Department for inclusion in the record of CU 22-01. The site size, dimensions, location, topography, and access are adequate for the needs of the proposed use. Staff finds that the site size, dimensions, location, topography, and access are adequate for the proposed use. Any negative impacts of the proposed use on the adjacent properties and on public can be mitigated through application of other code standards or other reasonable conditions of approval that include but are not limited to those listed in this chapter. Staff has not identified any negative impacts to the adjacent properties. To ensure compliance with the standards listed in the Sweet Home Municipal Code, staff has included proposed conditions of approval that are listed in section 4 of this report. The subject property has access to city water and sewer. Staff finds that the proposed use has adequate capacity. The applicant is not proposing a home occupation, and the applicant is not proposing to establish a marijuana facility. The provisions of the Sweet Home Municipal Code allows the Planning Commission to impose conditions of approval. This is an opportunity for the Planning Commission to determine if conditions are needed to ensure compliance with the decision criteria, as well as the best interests of the surrounding properties, the neighborhood, and the city as a whole, as specified in Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.80.050. Conditions could include, but are not limited to, expanding setbacks, limiting hours of operation, requiring site or architectural design features, imposing additional sign standards, and so forth. To ensure compliance with the standards listed in the Sweet Home Municipal Code, staff has included proposed conditions of approval listed in section 4 of this report. These conditions are primarily a customized list of existing local, state, and federal standards that apply to the application. As required in this section, staff recommends that a condition of approval require that the conditional use permit be void 1 year after the date of the Planning Commission approval if the use has not been substantially established as defined under the Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.80.070A within that time period. The city planner may grant one extension of up to 1 year for a conditional use permit that contained a 1-year initial duration upon written request of the applicant and prior to the expiration of the approved period. Requests other than a 1-year request made prior to the expiration of the approved period must be approved by the Planning Commission. A conditional use permit not meeting the above timeframes will be expired and a new application will be required. If the Planning Commission approves this application, staff recommends that the conditions of approval listed below be required in order to ensure that the application is consistent with the findings in the review and design criteria in section 3 and as required by the Sweet Home Municipal Code and other provisions of law. Appeals to the land board The Land Use Board of Appeals, LUBA, may only be based on review and design criteria contained in Section 3. The recommended conditions of approval for CU 22-01. Number 1, applications PLA 22-01, PLA 22-02, and PLA 22-03 being filed simultaneously with application CU 22-01 shall be approved by administration. Applications PLA 22-01, 22-02, and 22-03 were approved by Community and Economic Development Director on January 24th, 2022. The appeal period ends at 5 p.m. on February 5th, 2022. So those have been approved. Number 2, the property owner shall obtain and comply with all other applicable local, state, and federal permits and requirements. Number 3, the conditional use permit shall be void 1 year after the date of the Planning Commission approval if the use has not been substantially established as defined under Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.80.070A. Within that time period, the city planner may grant one extension of up to 1 year for a conditional use permit that contain a 1-year initial duration upon written request of the applicant and prior to the expiration of the approved period. Requests other than 1 year requests made prior to the expiration of the approved period must be approved by the Planning Commission. A conditional use permit not meeting the above timeframes will be expired and a new application will be required. In acting on conditional use permit application, the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing at which it may either approve or deny the application. If the application is denied, the action must be based on the applicable review and design criteria. If approved, the Planning Commission may impose the conditions of approval. Staff's recommended conditions are included in Section 4. The appeal period pursuant to the ORS 227.175, the Planning Commission may establish an appeal period of not less than 12 days from the date of the written notice of the Planning Commission's decision is mailed. Staff's recommendation is that the Planning Commission's decision on this matter be subject to a 12-day appeal period from the date that the notice of decision is mailed. Order after the Planning Commission decides, staff recommends that the Planning Commission direct staff to prepare an order that is signed by the chairperson of the Planning Commission. The order would memorialize the decision and provide the official list of conditions, if any, that apply to the approval, if the application is approved. Motion: after opening the public hearing and receiving testimony, the Planning Commission's options include the following. 1, move to approve application CU 22-01, which includes adopting the findings of fact listed in the staff report and the conditions of approval listed in Section 4 of the staff report, the setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision. 2, move to deny application CU 22-01, which includes adopting the finding of fact, including the setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision. 3, move to continue the public hearing to a date and time certain, or 4, other.
All right.
Conclude.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Angela. You're going to be hoarse after tonight.
Brought lots of
So at this point, we're going to have public testimony. I don't believe we have our applicant in the room in regards to this. So if anybody is wishing to speak in favor of the application, they can do so at this time. Any opponents wishing to speak? Any neutral testimony, not for or against? Oh, yep. Not yet. Not yet. Very close. Yes. Okay, so there's no comment from the public. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing for discussion amongst the council at 6:44. Anybody have anything? Kind of a standard thing when the public entities or properties.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've already done the property line adjustments. So as part of that, we're required to do a conditional use permit. Just like the fire station had to do with theirs.
Yep.
So I
Okay.
think they're just trying to sanitize the whole layout of.
They have these little tiny pieces that are,
Yeah.
and they wanted to combine it all together. Eventually they may add on to one building that happens to cross the property lines,
I
but they
see.
wanted to take care of it all now. So they just decided to, and unfortunately, when you do a property line adjustment, because we don't have a public zone yet, they have to do a conditional use.
Correct.
And so they're doing it now because, like, why didn't they do it 5 years ago, or why don't they put it off for 5 years? I mean, what's the now about?
I don't, well, part of it is they're thinking about adding on to a building and it does cross property lines. So instead of just combining the two property lines below, they decided to do all of them that were just hanging out there. When they do development, I don't know. They just said that's kind of what got them thinking about it.
And what about the letter from a neighbor? Didn't this one have a letter?
Yeah.
from a-
Yes, but it was just about
clarification.
Clear, just saying that all we did is quote code and,
But that's what you do.
yeah.
But that's
So
what's required.
that's
yeah.
what it was about. It's just
Yeah.
quoting code and that it doesn't make any sense because of the code. So I put it in there because that's what was sent.
Yeah, I
but
think a lot of this has come about because they had to do the same thing with the junior high, just to kind of get everything, so they had the proper setbacks prior to doing any construction.
We've been working through the same thing with the wastewater treatment plant as well, and you will see a similar conditional use permit for that site also.
Okay. All right, if there's no further discussion, we'll look for a motion in regards to this application.
I would move to approve the application CU 22-01, which includes adopting the findings of fact listed in the staff report and the conditions of approval listed in, gosh, my glasses are foggy. Section 4 of the staff report, the setting of the 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll go to Angela for a roll call vote.
Okay, Commissioner Parker,
Yes.
Commissioner Wood,
Yes.
Commissioner Melcher,
Yes.
Commissioner Journey,
Yes.
and Commissioner Loman.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
All right. All right, so we're going to go ahead and open the public hearing for application CU 2203 at 6:46. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to allow for a drive-in service facility in the central commercial C1 zone. In a C1 zone, the following uses and their accessory uses may be permitted, subject to the provisions of Chapter 17.80. Any use permitted in the C1 zone with a customer drive-in service facility, the subject property is in the central commercial C1 zone. The applicable substantive criteria are listed in the staff report. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward that criteria described or other criteria in the plan or land use regulation, which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes the appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. So do any of our commissioners have any personal bias in regard to this application? Okay, any conflicts of interest? Any ex parte information? All right, so once again, we will turn it over to Angela for our staff report.
Staff report for conditional use application 22-03. The applicant is requesting sorry, I'm not on. Is requesting a conditional use permit to allow for a drive-in service facility in the commercial central zone. Based on the review of the FEMA flood insurance rate map panel 41043C0913G dated September 29th, 2010, the subject property is not in the special flood hazard area. The western portion of the property is in the 0.2% annual chance flood hazard areas of 1% annual chance flood, with the average depth less than 1 foot or a drainage area of less than 1 square mile. Based on the ArcGIS map, the subject property is in the Ames Creek 500-year floodplain. Based on the review of the City of Sweet Home local wetlands inventory and a review of the National Wetlands Inventory map, subject property does not contain inventoried wetlands. The subject property has access along 15th Avenue. The subject property has access to city water and sewer services in the Main Street and 15th Avenue. Excuse me. In a C1 zone, the following uses and their accessory uses may be permitted subject to the provisions of Chapter 17.80. Any use permitted in the C1 zone with a customer drive-in service facility per Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.32.030E. For this application to comply with all applicable city codes and state and federal laws, the application may require additional permits. If this application is approved, staff recommends a condition of approval that prior to operation, the applicant shall obtain all required local, state, and federal permits. The applicant shall submit copies of the required permits and licenses to the Sweet Home Community Economic Development Department for inclusion in the record of CU 22-03. Staff finds that the site size, dimensions, location, topography, and access are adequate on the proposed use. 1 parking space per 100 square foot floor area is required per Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.08090H19. The building is 2,056 square feet, requiring 21 parking stalls. Only 20 stalls are shown on the attached map, attachment B. 1 additional stall is required. Staff has not identified any negative impacts to the adjacent properties. To ensure compliance with the standards listed in the Sweet Home Municipal Code, staff has included proposed conditions of approval that are listed in Section 4 of this report. The subject property has access to city water and sewer. Staff finds that the proposed use has adequate capacity. The applicant is not proposing a home occupation. The applicant is not proposing to establish a marijuana facility. This provision of the Sweet Home Municipal Code allows for the Planning Commission to impose conditions of approval. This is an opportunity for the Planning Commission to determine if conditions are needed to ensure compliance with the decision criteria, as well as the best interest of the surrounding properties, the neighborhood, and the city as a whole. As specified in Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.80.050, conditions could include but are not limited to expanding setbacks, limiting hours of operation, requiring site and architectural design features, imposing additional sign standards, and so forth. To ensure compliance with the standards listed in the Sweet Home Municipal Code, staff has included proposed conditions of approval listed in Section 4 of this report. These conditions are primarily a customized list of existing local, state, and federal standards that apply to the application. As required under this section, staff recommends that a condition of approval require that the conditional use permit shall be void 1 year after the date of the Planning Commission approval if the use has not been substantially established, as defined under Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.80.070A within that time period. The city planner may grant one extension of up to 1 year for a conditional use permit that contained a 1 year initial duration upon written request of the applicant and prior to the expiration of the approval period. Requests other than a 1 year request made prior to the expiration of the approved period must be approved by the Planning Commission. A conditional use permit not meeting the above timeframes will be expired and new application will be required. If the Planning Commission approves this application, staff recommends that the conditions of approval listed below be required in order to ensure that the application is consistent with the findings and review and design criteria in Section 3 and as required by the Sweet Home Municipal Code and other provisions of law. Appeals to the Land Use Board of Appeals, LUBA, may only be based on review and design criteria contained in Section 3. The recommended conditions of approval for CU 22-03, number 1, the applicant shall provide 21 parking stalls for the proposed development. Number 2, the property owner shall obtain and comply with all other applicable local, state, and federal permits and requirements. Number 3, the conditional use permit shall be void 1 year after the date of the Planning Commission approval if the use has not been substantially established as defined under Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.80.070A within that time period. The city planner may grant one extension of up to 1 year for a conditional use permit that contained a 1 year initial duration upon request of the applicant and prior to the expiration of the approved period. Request other than 1 year request made prior to the expiration of the approved period must be approved by the Planning Commission. A conditional use permit not meeting the above timeframes will be expired and a new application will be required. In acting on a conditional use permit application, the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing at which it may either approve or deny the application. If the application is denied, the action must be based on the applicable review and design criteria. If approved, the Planning Commission may impose conditions of approval. Staff recommended conditions are included in Section 4. Pursuant to ORS 227175, the Planning Commission may establish an appeal period of not less than 12 days from the date of the written notice that the Planning Commission's decision is mailed. Staff recommendation is that the Planning Commission's decision on this matter be subject to a 12-day appeal period from the date of the notice of the decision is mailed. After the Planning Commission decides, staff recommends that the Planning Commission direct staff to prepare an order that is signed by the chairperson of the Planning Commission. The order would memorialize the decision and provide the official list of conditions, if any, that apply to the approval if the application is approved. After opening the public hearing and receiving testimony, the Planning Commission's options include the following. 1, move to approve application CU 22-03, which includes adopting the findings of fact listed in the staff report and the conditions of approval listed in Section 4 of the staff report, the setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision. Number 2, move to deny application CU 22-03, which includes adopting the findings of facts, including a setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision. Number 3, move to continue the public hearing to a date and time certain, or number 4, other. And I need to address, so after the staff report was completed, just a note, so this building is actually outright permitted. The only thing that needs to be approved is the actual drive-through through the conditional use. And for condition of approval number 1, which was the applicant shall provide 21 parking stalls for proposed development, I received an email from Excel Engineering on March 1st stating that they are obtaining a parking easement that shall have a non-exclusive easement to use 1 parking space on parcel 2, which is the parcel directly north of it. The easement will bring the applicant into compliance with the parking requirements. So,
That easement been filed.
What was that?
That easement's been filed.
No, they are going to be sending it to me as soon as it gets signed. That's it.
All right. So at this time, if we have our applicant for our conditional use permit, we'd invite them to come forward. I highly doubt that they are here, but I'll say it anyway. Any testimony in favor of this application? Testimony opposed? Any neutral testimony in regards to this application? All right, so then we will close the public hearing for CU 2203 at 7:56 for discussion amongst the commission. Question?
Did they submit any like studies or estimates during peak hours? Because when I look at this and I see there's one car stacked behind the menu or where you order,
Mm-hmm.
and any other Taco Bell I've ever been at, there's been 15 to 20. And I'm just wondering where those cars are going to go.
Talking to Joe, no, they haven't submitted anything with that.
And when they come in on the north end, do they try to make that really sharp 180 turn into the drive, or do they have to go all the way around the parking lot and then come back up and then stack up behind and block the parking spaces in when they line up?
So I have a question that tags on to what Jamie's asking, because it looks like the ingress and egress is the same opening.
If you have two cars behind the,
So
one
yeah,
extra car behind the,
you got cars
Mainly.
coming off of 15. They're making a hard right, almost a U-E. And but you've also got cars going into Safeway, and you've got cars coming out of the Taco Bell lot, along with the cars that are coming out of Safeway's lot. That to me just seems like crazy congested. And that, as Jamie was saying, that hard right to come off of the driveway into the drive-through just seems like,
if there's no other cars there.
Yeah,
if there's no other cars, they're okay, but it's still a hard
Mhm.
curve. And like you say, if they're stacked up like they are in Lebanon, 15 back, like where does that go?
So keep in mind that this is still connected to the rest of the parking lot. So with this plan, there is flexibility, I think, with directing that traffic to take the long way around, which would allow more stacking space.
But
So
then we're going
what's
to
the
block those people in that are parked there.
What's the long way around?
What I mean is, so you have, this is the main entrance off of 15.
Right, 15.
15.
15.
This could be a one-way. You could basically direct that this be, you aren't allowed to make this turn, that you have to go through, cycle around, and come around this way.
Oh, I see. There's another opening down there.
Yeah, so there's an opening to the parking lot at Safeway here and here.
And that
Okay.
entrance also goes on to Main Street right outside in Safeway.
Right, so you have
Yeah.
people are gonna, off of Main, anybody who's going west on Main has the option of going through the Safeway parking lot
Right.
and then accessing here and then getting into the drive-through.
So, I mean, even today, there's still only two ingresses to Safeway, one off of the westbound Main Street and then off of 15th.
Because,
'cause you
that's
can't come
not
in that immediate entrance.
an ingress.
So you
it's an
could
egress.
ingress in here
Ingress
and go
there.
through,
Right,
or go turn on 15th. And
right. But right now, there's nothing going on at 1502 Main Street. And so that kind of frees up that area for multiple cars,
Yeah.
and RVs and RVs towing, whatever, which I've seen parked there frequently in the summer.
That's going to
So-
be,
With
an issue
anything
with
that
them
goes in there,
running
it'd be
their
an
parking
issue.
lot. Yeah,
No,
it's not going to have any RV spaces or.
No, I understand.
Capability.
I'm just saying that's how it's used
Mhm.
now.
Hey, ma'am.
Just a sec.
I'm just asking about traffic flow.
Mhm, mhm.
And
And is Safeway okay if they direct their traffic over to the Safeway property to?
So that hasn't been, that hasn't come up in any meetings with them. I know that Safeway had to sign on for the Taco Bell to go in because they have
Right.
the nature of their contract with the property owner is that they get a say on who goes in there.
Right.
And so naturally they have to know that their parking lot is going to be affected regardless of
Right.
of whether it's on an official action or not.
And so, the other thing is people will go along the path of least resistance and they'll find a way to wiggle around in the parking lot and get to where they want to go.
Sure.
And I guess if the property owner, Safeway and Taco Bell are okay with that, then okay. Or they're just going to have to figure out a way to direct traffic the way they want to.
When it comes to RVs and trailers, I will say that the amount of traffic going into a place usually dictates whether those people are willing to stop and park there.
Yeah.
If there's congestion in there, I know if I'm towing something, I'm not going in there.
No, I
And so
understand
that behavior is going to be affected by
Right.
how much traffic goes into this site.
And I'm just saying, this is now, then will be then.
Mhm.
So there's going to be a difference.
Mhm.
There'll be a change.
Yeah.
I've been stuck in a parking spot where there's been a line of cars behind me stacked up to try to get through the drive-through and I couldn't get out. They couldn't back out to let me out.
Mhm.
I just had to wait.
And then I guess my other concern, and maybe this has been thought about by the owner, is the high school students walk across Main Street to go to Safeway for lunch. And they're going to be walking path of least resistance across wherever. And if the developer was here, I would ask them if they thought about that in terms of sidewalks and, this parking lot that's at lunchtime full of cars going in and out, I'm just concerned that the students
Just
will
keep
be
in
able-
mind too, that students crossing the parking lot have already taken the risk of crossing the highway itself. So I would think the
Right.
parking lot would probably be a little less risky than crossing the actual.
Well, we know that teenagers are not risk averse.
No.
And so, again, I'm just wondering if they've thought about this and how they're configuring what they're doing.
From my knowledge, we have not had the conversation with them about pedestrians, given that this is already an established urban area that has sidewalks and crosswalks in the area. And so it's not really what they're thinking.
But it's private property and it's private
True.
property now, but now it's going to be private property with an ongoing business
Right.
that wants to keep their driveways clear for
So-
cars to come in, not have to worry about
and-
pedestrians.
True. And
So-
if you'll forgive me, we do need to limit our analysis here to the conditional use at hand, which is the drive-through. And so the stacking certainly is a valid concern for that, but pedestrians don't have as much of an impact on the drive-through itself.
Well, as part of the building permit itself and the approval process for that, will they be required to submit any kind of a traffic flow plan or possible mitigation for that? Addressing the possible addition of a one-way?
Yeah, we don't have any requirements in code but it's certainly within if you wanted to add a condition of approval that involved something like that, I guess one thing is we could float the idea of a conditional approval that would dictate that they have to have plans in place that where's the mouse? Not showing up. There it is. Plans in place that would dictate how they would handle traffic stacking up here.
That would
That is
be
not
my-
an unusual thing when it comes to drive-throughs, and I just saw it the other morning at
Dutch Brothers?
Dutch Brothers. That happens pretty frequently there. Fortunately, there's enough space that they can.
And they're not blocking into
Handle
the
it.
traffic
Right.
or
Yeah.
that's set up
I
different.
see, on 15, turning from Main onto 15. I just think that's gonna get backed up, especially if somebody wants to go around to the bank or so. If they're turning in that way.
Yeah, the only thing we have to remember though is we have to assume that we can only control what's happening on the property, and we can't control the number of cars deciding they needed a bean burrito all at the same time. I think it would be well within our right to ask for a traffic flow.
During peak.
Maybe a different delineation on the map instead of in and out at the same spots. Maybe look at a one-way version of this.
Ask how many they estimate during peak hours, maybe between 11:30 and 1:30 per,
I mean, if they're willing to get an easement for one spot from the property to the north, what about possibly 3? And then eliminating where detail number 15 is sitting in that parking lot, in that parking spot, and having the drive-through kind of overflow extend out to Safeway.
I just see people not even able to get into Safeway to get their groceries at 5 o'clock when people are going to be lined up at Taco Bell.
Well, we have to keep in
Oh.
mind that they're actually crossing Taco Bell property to get to Safeway. So
There's other ways to get into
But then they're
Safeway
gonna
as well.
cross Safeway property to get to their Taco Bell line. So
if they've signed on to work together, which can work, I've seen Taco
Mhm.
Bells in Safeway parking lots.
Sure.
So my biggest concern, like the rest of the council, is the backup. Especially with it being new, it will take quite some time for that to kind of ease itself out.
I think that like a one-way would probably work much better. It would keep the flow going out and out of the way of the egress for Safeway that's right there. Keep them from blocking in that way. And right now, I tend to think that right now that building is empty and we don't have a lot of traffic in that corner at
Correct.
all. There's
None.
usually nobody over there. So we know that Safeway doesn't really need to use that overflow very often, so it's kind of protected. So I don't see, although it will make it busier and traffic will be you'll have to fight a little bit more traffic to get out of Safeway. But I don't see it as really detrimental to Safeway customers at all.
You're going to probably see more Safeway customers use that other egress. Then you'll see fewer people coming out to 15th from Safeway and more going straight on the main.
Yeah, it'll be just the people going on to 15th that need to go east.
That too, yeah. So I guess from staff's perspective, if you want a couple things, if your concerns can be met with a condition of approval, then you can add that condition of approval and we can have this approved tonight. If you need more word back from the applicant, then this item would need to be continued to a future meeting.
I think I would lean toward continuation with a different parking lot design, incorporating more of a one-way situation to alleviate any backup onto 15th.
and addressing those parking spots on the east side to show how would they get out if there's any more than 2 or 3 cars stacked. That's going to block
Yeah, that one will
all
probably be a
those
little bit harder.
spots.
So I'd like to take the devil's advocate to my previous argument. Because this is private property and there are engineers who have looked this over. I'm assuming they're intelligent, well-educated people that came up with this idea. I'm making a bunch of assumptions. I'm assuming that given all the elements, they're engineers after all, they would have taken into account all the elements that this may be their best possible solution. And so in a sense, I don't necessarily want to second guess their proposal other than to voice my concerns here. So I could just as easily say, fine, let's approve it tonight and give it to them. And it's them and Safeway to work out.
I can confirm that they have had a number of firms contact city staff to go over various items. Everybody from traffic engineers to landscaping folks to, I mean,
Mhm.
it's almost been kind of exhausting for staff to work through this because it seems like we have a different person contacting us every week about what our requirements are and what they need to do. So they do this a lot, and they have a lot of professional firms working on this.
This isn't their first taco.
Definitely not their first rodeo.
Yeah, so in that regard, I guess I don't necessarily want to second guess them, although if they had had somebody here, we could have gotten some input here tonight, and that would have been very helpful.
Which is an ongoing issue with applicants.
I think they need to show us more what it's going to actually be like during the peak hours, during lunch and dinner, when we're going to have more than one car stacked behind the order board.
You know,
And where would those cars go? And how would it affect the rest of the flow and the parking?
yeah, this I guess is what they're showing will be the
Where would
place to order.
where would that second car behind there go? Would it block that that ingress right there into the
You mean if
parking
there
lot?
was another car here?
Yep. And where would the car behind that one go?
So I think that's a good question.
So what I'm hearing is that you would like to get more information from them? Is that,
I would like to see one more version of the layout of the parking lot. I know that the building has to be in a specific location to allow for the drive-through and everything, and they're squeezing it as close as they can to the street to maximize parking. But at the same time, is there just one slightly different version, as simple as one-way arrows versus two-way arrows?
okay. So if you would, if the commission would like to make a motion or pass a motion that this be continued to the next commission meeting, we have one scheduled for, weren't we talking about a March 17th meeting? I know, I just hate to make them wait. March 17th is an option.
If they could get us something by then.
Well, I would suggest going ahead and continuing it to March 17th, and if they're not able to get us something in time, then we would just open it up at that meeting and continue it again.
All right.
But we do need a motion to that effect.
Correct.
I would make a motion to continue land use application CU 22-03 to our next meeting of March 17th, 2022, and ask the applicant to address our questions or concerns.
Second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll send it to Angela for our roll call vote.
Commissioner Wood,
Yes.
Commissioner Melcher.
Yes.
Commissioner Parker,
Yes.
Commissioner Journey,
Yes,
Commissioner Loman.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes to continue to March 17th.
All right. Thank you all for waiting through that. So on this next one, we're going to group these together. So if you would allow us just a little bit of time, we're going to read through all three descriptions, and then we will discuss all of them together, but they all will be voted on separately and deliberated on separately. So yeah, you're gonna need it. All right. Well, let me confer to all my notes at the same time. All right, so we're gonna open the public hearing for the combined readings of CU 2202, PD 2201, and SD 2201. The same time to save time, and we're opening the public hearing at 7:15. All right. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to allow residential uses not related to or in conjunction with the recreational development proposed. The proposed is a subdivision and planned development in the recreational commercial RC zone The subject property is in the recreational commercial RC zone. Plan development application sorry, PD 2201 and subdivision application SD01 are pending the approval of application CU 2202. Application CU 2202 is being filed simultaneously with the application PD 2201 and SD 2201. Application PD 2201, the applicant is requesting a planned development overlay to an approximately 790,718 square feet or 18.14 acres property located to the northeast of Zelkova and Clark Mill Road intersection. The planned development is requested for the subject property, which is identified as 1400 Clark Mill Road and Lynn County Tax Assessor's Map number 13S01E29. Tax lot is 3502. The proposal includes a preliminary plan to subdivide approximately 13 acres into 42 residential lots and 4 tracts. The remaining 5 acres are proposed to be developed at a later time. As proposed, the subdivision lots will range in size from 8,032 square feet to 12,290 square feet. Tract A shall be approximately 2,271 square feet. Tract B shall be approximately 3,857 square feet. Tract C shall be approximately 2,223 square feet. Tract D shall be approximately 70,378 square feet, including a pond. The purpose of the request is to allow single-family residential uses permitted conditionally via Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.60.030D to be developed in accordance with the development standards of Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.60.040B. All lots will be eligible to be developed with single-family, two-family, or single-family with attached dwellings and accessory uses with the approval of a conditional use permit, allowing a residential use not related to or in conjunction with a recreational development. The subject property in the recreational commercial RC zone and the planned development overlay application PD 2201 is pending the approval of conditional use application CU 2202. Application PD 2201 is being filed simultaneously with the application CU 2202 and SD 2201. And then the final description for application SD 22-01. Applicant is requesting to subdivide an approximately 13.37 acre site into 42 residential lots and 4 tracts, including an existing single-family residential dwelling that will be retained with the proposed development. Subject property is in the northeast of Zelkova Street and Clark Mill Road intersection and is identified by 1400 Clark Mill Road and Lynn County Tax Assessor's Map number 13S01E29, tax lot 3502. Lots would range in size from 8,032 square feet to 12,290 square feet. Dwellings and accessory uses with the approval of conditional use permit allowing residential uses not related to or in conjunction with a recreational development, Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.60.030D. The subject property is in the recreational commercial RC zone. Application SD 2201 is pending the approval of conditional use application CU 2202. And the plan development overlay application of PD 2201, application SD 2201 is being filed simultaneously with the application CU 2202 and PD 2201. Good Lord. I know how you feel, Angela. All right, the applicable substantive criteria are listed in the staff report. Testimonies, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the criteria described or other criteria in the plan or land use regulation, which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes the appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. All that being read in, do any of our commissioners have any personal bias in regards to these 3 applications?
No.
Any conflicts of interest?
No.
Any ex parte information?
Nope.
All right, at this point, Angela, it's your turn.
Yes, thank you. Yes, tell me to turn it on. Well, you know. All right. So I will get through this as quickly as possible. Just to let you guys know, just to remind the audience, if you're here to speak, make sure you sign in on the sign-in sheet. We also have Staff Engineer Joe Graybill and Public Works Engineering Technician Trish Rice here to help out with questions. So, all right. The subject property is in the recreation commercial zone. The applicant is requesting conditional use permit to allow for residential uses not in related to or in conjunction with recreation development. The applicant is requesting a planned development overlaid to approximately 790,718 square feet. 18.14 acre property located on the northeast of Zalkova Street and Clark Mill Road intersection. The purpose of the request is to allow single-family residential uses permitted conditionally via Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.60030D to be developed in accordance with the development standards of Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.60040B. All lots would be eligible to be developed with single, two-family, and/or single-family attached dwellings and accessory uses with approval of a conditional use permit, allowing residential uses not related to or in conjunction with the recreation development. Per Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.60.030D, as proposed, Tract A will provide area for entry landscaping and entry monument sign. Tract B and C are planned to be deeded to the neighboring property to mitigate the existing gravel access driveway encroachment. Tract D is being created to convey to the city of Sweet Home and intended to be an open space available for use by the public. The applicant is requesting to divide an approximately 13.37 acre site into 42 residential lots in 4 tracts, including an existing single-family residential dwelling that will be retained with the proposed development. Lot sizes range in size from 8,032 square feet to 12,290 square feet. Based on the review of the FEMA flood insurance rate map panel 41043C0912G, dated September 29th, 2010, the subject property is not in the special flood hazard area. Based on the review of the city's Sweet Home local wetlands inventory and review of the national wetlands inventory map, the subject property does contain inventory wetlands. Identified wetland SSR-31 is in Tract D and abuts the proposed subdivision SD22-01, and wetland SR32 is in the area of future development. The subject properties have frontage and access along Clark Mill Road. The applicant is proposing to create a local street network with the planned development application PD22-01 and subdivision applications SD22-01. The city water and sewer services are available at the corner of Zalkova Street and Clark Mill Road. The water and sewer lines will need to be extended to service the proposed subdivision. In an RC zone, the following uses and their accessory uses may be permitted as part of a planned development or subject to the provisions of this action, 17.60 and Chapter 17.80. Residential uses not related to or in conjunction with recreational development, Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.60060D. For the application to comply with all applicable city codes and state and federal laws, this application may require additional permits. If this application is approved, staff recommends a condition of approval that prior to operation, the applicant shall obtain all required local, state, and federal permits. The applicant shall submit copies of the acquired permits and licenses to the Sweet Home Community and Economic Development Department for inclusion in the record. The conditional use application is required because the proposed residential development is not in conjunction with the recreation development. In reviewing the proposal, staff finds that the proposed plan development application is similar to other subdivisions in Sweet Home. Proposed use will have building size, parking, traffic, noise, etc., similar to a standard subdivision. Therefore, staff finds that the site size, dimensions, location, topography, and access are adequate for the proposed use. Staff has not identified any negative impacts to adjacent properties in order to ensure compliance with the standards listed in Sweet Home Municipal Code. Staff has included proposed conditions of approval that are listed in Section 4 of each report. The subject property has access to city and water sewer. The city water and sewer service terminate at the corner of Zalkova Street and Clark Mill Road. The water and sewer lines will need to be extended to service the proposed planned development. Staff finds that the proposed use has adequate capacity. The applicant is not proposing a home occupation. The applicant is not proposing to establish a marijuana facility. The provision of the Sweet Home Municipal Code allows the Planning Commission to impose conditions of approval. This is an opportunity for the Planning Commission to determine if conditions are needed in order to ensure compliance with the decision criteria, as well as the best interests of the surrounding properties, the neighborhood, and the city as a whole, as specified in Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.80.050. Conditions should include, but are not limited to, expanding setbacks, limiting hours of operation, requiring site or architectural design features, imposing additional sign standards, and so forth. In order to ensure compliance with the standard listed in Sweet Home Municipal Code. Staff has included proposed conditions of a development listed in Section 4 of this report. The conditions are primarily a customized list of existing local, state, and federal standards that apply to the application. As required under this section, if staff recommends that a condition of approval require that the conditional use permit shall be void 1 year after the date of Planning Commission approval if the use has not been substantially established, as defined under the Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.80.070A within that time period. The city planner may grant one extension of up to 1 year for a conditional use permit that contained a 1 year initial duration upon written request of the applicant and prior to the expiration of the approved period. Requests other than 1 year requests made prior to the expiration of the approved period must be approved by the Planning Commission. A conditional use permit not meeting the above timeframes will be expired and a new application will be required. Application PD 22-01 is pending the approval of application CU 22-02, excuse me. With the approval of CU 22-02, all lots will be eligible to be developed with single, two-family, and/or single-family attached dwellings and accessory structures with approval of the conditional use permit CU 22-02, allowing residential uses not related to or in conjunction with the recreation development. The applicant submitted a plan development application in conjunction with the subdivision application. The applicant has proposed to subdivide the property in 42 lots, 4 tracts, and 5-acre future development area. The applicant is proposing to modify the minimum lot width in Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.60040. The minimum lot width for a single-family dwelling is 80 feet, 17.60040A2, and the minimum lot width for a for a two-family dwelling is 60 feet, 17.60040B2. Staff feels that lot widths are in error and should have been reversed when the code was created. The applicant intends the plan development overlay to be applied to the entire lot, not just the proposed subdivision. The applicant states that the plan development will meet the applicable requirements to the final plat process. Staff finds that the final plat will be reviewed through the final plat process as discussed later in the staff report. The proposed plan development would be accessed from Clark Mill Road, not a public road network, and a public road network as proposed in attachment B. The applicant is proposing all utility facilities underground. The staff engineer reviewed the proposed street design and found that the proposed street meets the city standards. The applicant is proposing an open space area defined as Tract D in the provided site plan. The tract is being created to convey to the city of Sweet Home and intended to be an open space available for the use by the public. Staff finds the amenities are buffered from the abutting uses. Per the Public Works comments in Section 2, city standard is that detention ponds to serve developments are private. However, in this case, the city may wish to discuss with developer an option incorporating the detention pond into a city park. Public Works Maintenance has indicated a willingness to maintain the pond if it is a part of a city park. The applicant states that all state and city standards will be followed during the development. The applicant has not proposed to phase the plan development. Staff finds that the approval of the plan development overlay gives the applicant a greater variety of diversification between buildings and open spaces and subdivision proposal. The plan development will allow for modifications to the site development standards of the proposed subdivision, such as lot widths, without changing in use by the underlying zone. The applicant is proposing to modify the minimum lot width in Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.60. Sorry, this is going to be repetitive. The minimum lot width for single-family dwelling is 80 feet, and the minimum lot depth for two-family dwelling is 60 feet. The plan development will allow for modifications to the site development standards, such as lot width, without changing in use of the underlying zone. The applicant states that all state and city standards will be following during the development. There are no density requirements for the RC zone. The staff finds that the proposed density is sufficient for the use in the RC zone. Staff finds that the plan development project shall be compatible with the adjacent developments with consideration of the factors listed in the criteria. The proposed plan development modification is to the width of the lot. Staff believes the modification is only minor and the proposed project will be compatible with the adjacent developments. The applicant states that all state and city standards will be followed during the development. A plan development application, tentative plats, a narrative, a FEMA flood hazard map, and a national wetlands inventory map are included in the packet. Staff finds that the applicant has demonstrated the soundness of the proposal and their ability to carry out the project as proposed. The applicant has requested that the tentative subdivision plat be valid for a period of 2 years from the date of the notice of decision. The applicant also requests that the plan development overlay zone be designated future development site. Be valid for 4 years from the date of the notice of decision. Staff recommends a condition of approval stating that the plan development in conjunction with the proposed subdivision be valid for 2 years from the date of decision, and the plan development overlay in conjunction with the remaining 5 acres be valid for 4 years from the date of notice of decision. Staff finds that the proposal conforms with the location and general development standards of the city. The purpose of the planned development zone is to make possible a greater variety of diversification in the relationships between buildings and open spaces and planned building groups while ensuring compliance with the purposes and objectives of the zoning regulations and the intent and purpose of this chapter. The planned development zone is an overlay zone that can be applied in conjunction with any other zone designation. The proposed planned development will be an overlay zone to the recreation commercial zone standards. The planned development overlay zone permits modification to the site development standards, but not changes the uses of the underlying zone. The applicant is only requesting modifications to site development standards, not the uses permitted in the recreation commercial zone. Staff finds that the proposed development will benefit the city and the general public. The applicant has not requested any variances outside the planned development proposal. Per the staff engineer's comments in section 2, the east-west collector street will be using a multi-use path that will work for both access and the necessary right-of-way widths. The interior street network is looped, but as a whole functions like a cul-de-sac. All of Clark Mill Road basically functions the same as a cul-de-sac, also with only one roadway available to Main Street. Future development east and north on adjacent lands will eventually link the roadways in various ways. At that point, a traffic impact study may be required due to the larger development and multiple routes. The existing private driveway leading to the adjacent north property is being modified to tie into a collector street near the Zelkova intersection. Per the Public Works comments in section 2, the Clark Mill Road right-of-way extends north beyond the street connection and provides frontage to lot 3501. The street connection with Clark Mill Road shall have a T intersection, not a curve as drawn, to provide for future roadway extension to any further developments of lot 3501. Street improvements on Clark Mill Road are required for the development of Zelkova Street. The planned development will need to incorporate a street naming system beyond Z. Reference Sweet Home Municipal Code 12.20.030 system and naming streets. Per the staff engineer's comments, one water line comes into the neighborhood from Clark Mill Road. To provide flow networking and isolation, a water line from the east end of Green River Road needs to connect to the east end of the new collector street. A sanitary sewer system will connect to Clark Mill Road. Stormwater runoff will be managed and conveyed to the north through a constructed water quality and detention swell on the adjacent Track D parcel. An access road or path on the storm drainage easement will provide maintenance access to the basin and outlet. The city has responsibility for the pipeline and fixtures, while the basin vegetation and channel itself is a responsibility of the homeowners that will benefit from its use. Per the Public Works comments, Clark Mill has an 8-inch water main up to Green River Road and then a 2-inch water main up to Zelkova Road. The water main will need to be upsized to serve the development. Our capital improvement plan identifies a 10-inch northern transmission main from Clark Mill Road down Zelkova Street and through the Quarry Park property. On the block between Green River Road and Zelkova Street, the developer shall install an upsized water main consistent with the sizing requirements for the transmission main. The cost difference to build upsized pipe for city purposes would be eligible for SDC credits in accordance with the Sweet Home Municipal Code 13.12.110 credits. The developer shall provide a T with a northward stub out at the Clark Mill Road intersection and provide for future water extensions northward. The nearest sanitary manhole is approximately 6 feet deep. A sewer pump station may be required to serve the development. The design engineer shall make reasonable efforts to provide sewer by gravity to the extent possible. The developer shall provide a northward stub at the Clark Mill Road intersection to provide a future sewer extension northwards. The developer shall submit the engineered sewer plans to the Department of Environmental Quality for the plan review. DEQ approval shall be obtained prior to the issuance of the city infrastructure permit. The detention pond is located in the future development phase area. The developer shall indicate what will happen to the detention pond during the future development phase. For example, protect it, expand it to serve phase 2, etc. The detention pond is proposed to be public. City standard is that the detention pond to serve developments are private. However, in this case, the city may wish to discuss with the developer an option incorporating the detention pond into the city park. Public Works Maintenance has indicated a willingness to maintain the pond if it's part of a city park. The outfall from the pond crosses onto adjacent property lot 700, which is also owned by the applicant. A utility easement is recommended to prevent any dispute with future property owners in perpetuity. Utility easement to the pond has a drop-off with approximately 20% slope. Developer shall grade the easement to reduce the slope and base rock it to provide vehicles and equipment access to all pipes and appurtenances. I never said that right. Public Works recommended constructing the access in accordance with road-based requirements so that it won't have to be rebuilt in the future when the road is extended to the future development phase. There are no density requirements for the RC zone. Staff finds the density proposal for the subdivision is sufficient for the use of the RC zone. Sweet Home Municipal Code 16.16.025 provides a specific list of requirements for the application. The applicant submitted the plot plan on February 1st, 2022, with the requirements to comply with the Sweet Home Municipal Code Chapter 16. Staff finds that the proposal substantially conforms to the applicable provisions of the Sweet Home Municipal Code and the comprehensive plan. As proposed, each parcel would be of generally rectangular shape based on the applicant's proposed tentative submission map. Through the plan development process, the applicant is requesting to modify the minimum width standards for the single-family dwellings. All other standard yard and lot requirements for the RC zone will be maintained on each of the proposed lots. As proposed with application SD 22-01, the subdivision lots would range in size from 8,032 square feet to 12,290 square feet. Tract A shall have approximately 2,271 square feet. Tract B shall be approximately 3,857 square feet. Tract C shall be approximately 2,223 square feet, and Tract D shall be approximately 70,378 square feet, including a pond. The applicant does not propose to contain a part of any existing or proposed street. The ensure compliance staff recommends a condition of approval that the final configuration of proposed parcels 1 through 42, tracts A through D, and the future development site substantially conform to the plot plan reviewed in this application. Based on the site plan provided by the applicant, the lot depth would not exceed 2 1/2 times the average width. As depicted on the tentative subdivision map, the proposed parcels would have frontage of at least 25 feet along a public street. The frontages are proposed to be between 68 feet to 98 feet. The recreation commercial zone requires an 80-foot frontage for single-family dwellings and accessory uses, including accessory dwellings, and 60-foot frontage for two-family dwellings and accessory uses. Through the plan development, the applicant has asked for a minimum lot width of 60 feet to be included in the single-family dwelling lots. The applicant has proposed an easement for franchise utilities and drainage. The applicant has not proposed a joint use driveways. The applicant is not proposing a through lot. As depicted on attachment B, the proposed parcels would have sidelines that are at or very close to right angles to a public street. The applicant is not proposing a flag lot, and the applicant has not proposed any special setbacks. Staff finds that the remaining approximately 5 acres identified as future development on the site plan can be developed in accordance with this code. The applicant is proposing to create 42 residential lots, 4 tracts, new streets, and associated utilities. As reviewed in the staff report, the lots would remain minimum lot size of the zone and would be configured so they can accommodate a residential dwelling. Staff has not identified any features on the proposed plan development that would inhibit development on adjoining property. Based on the review of the FEMA flood insurance map panel 41043C0912G dated September 29th, 2010, the subject property is not in the special flood hazard area. Based on the review of the city's Sweet Home local wetlands inventory and a review of the National Wetlands Inventory map, the subject property does contain inventoried wetlands. The Department of State Lands Wetland Land Use Notification Response states that based on the review of the available information, there are jurisdictional wetlands and/or waters on site. The wetland delineation is recommended prior to development. A permit and associated mitigation may be required for removal and/or fill activities that are 50 cubic yards or greater. Staff recommends that the applicant contact the Department of State Lands and the Corps of Engineers to verify if there will be additional permitting required. Staff recommends a condition of approval that the wetland delineation be recommended prior to development and the applicant comply with all applicable local, state, and federal requirements. The applicant has not proposed to phase the development. The city has not been informed by the Sweet Home School District that their adopted school facility plan has identified a lack of school capacity. Staff does not recommend that this application be denied based on the lack of school capacity. The applicant is seeking to divide a property in the RC zone. To ensure compliance, staff recommends a condition of approval that upon development of the proposed parcels, the property owner shall construct all applicable street, sidewalk, and storm drain improvements that are required by and according to the provisions of the Sweet Home Municipal Code at the time of development. All public improvements must comply with the standards listed in the Sweet Home Municipal Code at the time of development. Staff has recommended conditions of approval listed in Section 4 to ensure that the final partition plat comply with the application that has been proposed. Additional conditions of approval may be required if any of the subject parcels are further divided under a future application or if they are physically developed with the residents. The application requests approval of plan development overlay in conjunction with the tentative subdivision plat to be valid for a period of 2 years of the effective date of the notice of decision. The applicant further requests the approval of plan development overlay in conjunction with the future development area to be valid for a period of 4 years of the effective date of the notices of the decision. The applicant is proposing development with the application SD 22-01. Extensions shall be permitted as allowed under Sweet Home Municipal Code 16.16.080. To complete the plan development, once land use authorization is obtained, the applicant will need to submit a final partition plat as outlined in Sweet Home Municipal Code 16.20.010B. The plat shall comply with the final plat review criteria listed in Sweet Home Municipal Code 16.20.2020 and shall contain all elements described in Sweet Home Municipal Code 16.20.030, final plat submittal. An applicant may petition for a review of an approved development plan for the purpose of modifying that plan. The petition must include a statement of the reasons for changes, as well as graphical and text representations of the proposed changes per Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.48.070. Major changes, when determined by the Community Development Director that the proposed change is a major change from one or more of the review criteria listed above, a hearing with notice as required in Chapter 17.12 of this Code of Ordinance shall be scheduled before the Planning Commission. In reviewing the proposed modification, the Planning Commission shall follow the procedure required for submittal and review of a new plan. The Planning Commission may consider the redesign of the development plan in whole or in part. Minor changes, when the Community Development Director determines that the proposed modifications of the plan reduce negative effects, or have no effect on the surrounding area, they may be reviewed and approved as administrative action. One moment, please. The application shall be subject to compliance with the conditions listed below as required by the findings of fact presented in the review criteria in Section 3 and as required by the Sweet Home Municipal Code and other provisions of law. Appeals to the Land Use Board of Appeals, LUBA, may only be based on review and design criteria contained in Section 3. Recommending conditions of approval for Conditional Use Application 22-01. Number 1, application SD 22-01 and PD 22-01 being filed simultaneously with application CU 22-02 shall be approved by Planning Commission. The property owner shall obtain and comply with all other applicable local, state, and federal permits and requirements. The conditional use permit shall be void 1 year after the date of Planning Commission approval if the use has not been substantially established as defined under Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.80.070A within that time period. The city planner may grant one extension of up to 1 year for a conditional use permit that contained a 1 year initial duration upon written request of the applicant and prior to the expiration of the approved period. Requests other than 1 year requests made prior to the expiration of the approved period must be approved by the Planning Commission. A conditional use permit not meeting the above timeframes will be expired and the new application will be required. Conditions of approval for application PD 22-01. Number 1, the final configuration of the proposed 18-acre property located to the northeast of the Zelkova Street and Clark Mill Road intersection. Plan development is requested for the subject property, which identifies as 1400 Clark Mill Road and Lynn County Tax Assessor's Map 13S01E29, Tax Lot 3502. The proposal includes a preliminary plan to subdivide approximately 13.37 acres into 42 residential lots and 4 tracts. The remaining approximately 5 acres are proposed to be developed at a later date. As proposed, lot sizes would range in size from 8,032 square feet to 12,290 square feet. All lots are eligible to be developed with single, two-family, or single-family attached dwellings. Number 2, the approval of conditional use application CU 22-02, allowing for residential subdivision in a recreation commercial zone. Number 3, the applicant shall change the name of Zelkova Road to Zelkova Street on the site plan. Number 4, the minimum lot width for single-family dwelling shall be 60 feet. Number 5, the applicant shall provide each property with its own water and sewer services. The access and utility easements shall be clearly identified. Number 6, the new property line shall be situated so that all buildings and structures comply with the yard setback requirements proposed in the plan development application and or the setback requirements in the recreation commercial zone. Application PD 21-01 is pending the approval of application CU 22-02, allowing single, two-family, and or single-family attached dwellings and accessory uses with approval of a conditional use permit allowing residential uses not related to or in conjunction with the recreation development. Sweet Home Municipal Code 1760030D. Application CU 22-02 is filed simultaneously. Within 2 years from the date of the approval of the tentative plan, the applicant shall prepare a final plat in conformance with the approved tentative plan, the provisions of the Sweet Home Municipal Code 16.20 and the provisions of the ORS Chapter 92. The applicant shall submit the final plat for city review as required by Sweet Home Municipal Code 16.20. The final plat shall include the information listed in Sweet Home Municipal Code 16.20.030. Approval of a development plan associated with the subdivision application SD 22-01 shall be valid for a 2-year period from the date of the approval without documented progress to complete implementation of an approved development plan. Approval of a development plan associated with the future development shall be valid for a 4-year period from the date of the approval without documented progress to complete an implementation of an approved development plan. At its discretion and without a public hearing, the Commission may extend the approval one time for a period not to exceed 2 additional years. Upon development of the proposed parcels, the property owner shall construct all applicable street, sidewalk, and storm drain improvements that are required by and according to the provisions of the Sweet Home Municipal Code at the time of development. All public improvements must comply with the standards listed in the Sweet Home Municipal Code at the time of development. Number 10, development of the subject parcel shall comply with all applicable local, state, and federal requirements. The applicant shall submit the engineered sewer plans to the Department of Environmental Quality for plan review. A wetland delineation is recommended prior to development. A permit and associated mitigation may be required for removal and/or fill activities that are 50 cubic yards or greater. Recommended conditions of approval for SD 22-01. Number 1, the final configuration of the proposed lot shall substantially conform to the plot plan reviewed in this application. The final configuration to subdivide an approximately 13.37 acre site into 42 residential lots, a 5-acre future development, 4 tracts, and an existing single-family residential dwelling that would be retained with the proposed development. The subject property is to the northeast of Zelkova Street and Clark Mill Road intersection, as identified as 1400 Clark Mill Road and Lynn County Assessor's Map Number 13S01E29, Tax Lot 3502. Lot sizes would range in size from 8,032 square feet to 12,290 square feet. All lots would be eligible to be developed with single, two-family, and/or single-family attached dwellings and accessory uses with approval of a conditional use permit, allowing residential uses not related to or in conjunction with the recreation development. Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.60.030D. The subject property is recreation commercial zone. Number 2, the approval of conditional use application CU 22-02, allowing residential subdivision and recreation commercial zone. Number 3, the approval of plan development application PD 22-01, allowing for single family dwelling lot widths to be a minimum of 60 feet. Number 4, the applicant shall change the name of Zelkova Road to Zelkova Street on the site plan. Number 5, per Sweet Home Municipal Code 12.20.030, the applicant shall incorporate a street naming system beyond Z. Number 6, the applicant shall provide a T intersection at the intersection of Clark Mill Road and the intersection to the subdivision. The applicant shall provide street improvements on Clark Mill Road from the development to Zelkova Street. The applicant shall upsize a water main from 2-inch to 8-inch from Green River Road to Zelkova Street. Install an upsized water main consistent with the sizing requirements for the transmission main, and shall provide a T with the northward stub out at the Clark Mill Road intersection to provide future water extensions northward. Number 9, Sweet Home Municipal Code 1612.040. Water system, the design shall be to city standards and shall be approved by the city engineer. The design shall take into account provisions for extensions beyond the subject property. The design shall adequately loop the city system. Number 10, the applicant shall provide a northward stub at the Clark Mill Road intersection to provide for future sewer extensions northward, and shall submit the engineered sewer plan to the Department of Environmental Quality for plan review. Sweet Home Municipal Code 1612.045, sanitary sewer. The design shall be to city standards and shall be approved by the city engineer. The design shall take into account capacity and grade to allow for desirable extension beyond the subject property. Staff recommends a utility easement from the pond in Tract D to Lot 700, also owned by the applicant, to prevent any disputes with future property owners in perpetuity. The applicant shall grade the utility easement to the pond, Tract D, to reduce the slope and base rock to the easement to provide vehicle and equipment access to all pipes and appurtenances. Upon development of the proposed parcel, the property owner shall construct all applicable street, sidewalk, and storm drain improvements that are required by and according to the provisions of Sweet Home Municipal Code at the time of development. All public improvements must comply with the standards listed in the Sweet Home Municipal Code at the time of development. 15, the new property line shall be situated so that all buildings and structures comply with the yard setback requirements of the recreation commercial zone. 16, improvements within the subdivision shall be installed at the expense of the subdivider as required by Sweet Home Municipal Code 16.24.050. Improvements shall be made under the procedures and specifications listed in Sweet Home Municipal Code, Chapter 16.24. Within 2 years from the date of approval of tentative plan, the application shall prepare a final plan in conformance with the approved tentative plan, the provisions of the Sweet Home Municipal Code 16.20, and the provisions of ORS Chapter 92. The applicant shall submit the final plat for city review as required by Sweet Home Municipal Code 16.20. The final plat shall include the information listed in Sweet Home Municipal Code 16.20.030. 18, approval of the development plan shall be valid for a 2-year period from the date of approval without documented progress to complete implementation of an approved development plan. Approval of development plan associated with the future development shall be valid for a 4-year period from the date of approval without documented progress to complete implementation of an approved development plan. At its discretion and without public hearing, the commission may extend the approval one time for a period not to exceed 2 additional years. Number 19, the applicant shall obtain all applicable development permits, which include but are not limited to public works permits, development permits, including building permits, and erosion control permits. The applicant shall obtain a 1200C stormwater permit from the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality and a Department of State Lands permits as applicable. In acting on a subdivision, plan development, or conditional use permit application, the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing at which it may either approve or deny the application. The application is denied, the action must be based on the applicable review and design criteria. If approved, the Planning Commission may impose conditions of approval. Staff recommended conditions are included in Section 4. Pursuant to ORS 227.175, the Planning Commission may establish an appeal period of not less than 12 days from the date of the written notice of the Planning Commission's decision is mailed. The staff's recommendation is that the Planning Commission decision on this matter be subject to a 12-day appeal period from the date that the notice of decision is mailed. After the Planning Commission decides, staff recommends that the Planning Commission direct staff to prepare an order that is signed by the chairperson of the Planning Commission. The order will memorialize the decision and provide the official list of conditions that apply to the approval if the application is approved. After the opening of the public hearing and receiving testimony, the Planning Commission's options include the following. Move to approve applications CU 22-02, PD 22-01, and SD 22-01, which includes the adopting the findings of fact list in the staff report and conditions of approval in Section 4 of the staff reports. The setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize the decision. Move to deny application CU 22-02, PD-22-01, SD 22-01, which includes adopting the findings of fact, including the setting of a 12-day appeal period from the date of mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision. Number 3, move to continue the public hearing to a date and time certain or for other. So we do have a few proposed changes to the conditions of approval. Let me take a drink first. Thank you for bearing with me with all that. Okay, so proposed changes. Conditional use application CU 22-02. At the applicant's request, condition of approval number 3, which states the conditional use permit shall be void 1 year after the date of the Planning Commission approval if the use has not been substantially established as defined under Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.80.070A. Within that time period, the city planner may grant one extension of up to 1 year for a conditional use permit that contained a 1-year initial duration upon written request of the applicant and prior to the expiration of the approved period. The request other than the 1 year period, 1 year request made prior to the expiration of the approved period must be approved by the Planning Commission. A conditional use permit not meeting the above timeframes will be expired and a new application is required. So the applicant's request is that the conditional use approval would expire, stated that the conditional use approval would expire prior to the approval deadline of the subdivision final plat. So can the condition be rewritten to blanket approval, allowing the residential development within the approved subdivision, or at least a deadline of 2 years from the approval of the final plat with the outlined extensions by the planner and the Planning Commission? That's the first one. Plan development 22-01. Condition of approval number 4, which reads the minimum lot width for a single family dwelling shall be 60 feet. The applicant requested the reduced lot width is part of the request. However, the proposal to allow single family uses to be developed in accordance with the development standard of Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.60040B. Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.60040B includes the development standards, which as a minimum setback standards, lot coverage, and height, in addition to minimum lot width and size. The same reasoning for the reduction in lot width applies to the other development standards. The standards for single and two-family dwellings appear to be reversed. The applicant's concern is that the side and rear setbacks under Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.60040B would also be too constraining for a single-family dwelling with a 60-foot lot width. The same may also apply to lot coverage. The applicant feels for ease of administration, it would be easiest to Sweet Home Municipal Code 16.60040B standards to be both single-family and two-family developments. So that's the one where when you read it, it seems like it should be backwards. So subdivision 22-01, staff recommendations, condition of approval number 6 reads the applicant shall provide a T intersection at the intersection of Clark Mill Road and the entrance to the subdivision. We request staff would recommend to the commission to remove this condition. Public Works was not involved in the conversations with the applicant regarding the alternate options for the intersection. Public Works approves of the option presented to staff. Staff recommends the approval of the intersection as presented in the application. And then we'd like to add condition of approval number 20, and it will initially be number 19 if 6 is removed. In the future development portion of the property, the applicant shall provide an access option for the property to the west that is not owned by the applicant. And an additional conditional of approval number 21, which will be 20 if number 6 is removed. The applicant will apply for the portion of Clark Mill Road north of development to be vacated. That is it for now. If you have any questions about those additions, let me know.
All right, with all of that behind us and some clarification, I'm sure yet to come, we're going to go ahead and invite our applicant to come forward. And for the record, since we're being recorded, if you could state your name and address. Go ahead. Yep,
Okay.
I think it's on.
It is.
Yep.
Good evening, Sweet Home Planning Commission. My name is Laura LaRock. Work with Udall Engineering and Land Survey. And joining me this evening is Brian Vendetta and the property owner, Troy Cummings. Property address for Udall Engineering is 63 East Ash Street in Lebanon, Oregon. So you'll be pleased to know I will not repeat that entire staff report one more time. I think it was pretty thoroughly covered in both the written portion of it and also Angela's oral presentation of it. So I'll provide some context and hopefully set the stage to answer any questions that you might have. The RC zone is a unique one. It was created, I believe, back in the early 90s. It was based off a master plan for over 800 acres of the northern part of Sweet Home. That plan development has gone by the wayside, and the zoning still stands and has not been amended since that time. So what you have before you, while it looks very complex and multifaceted, it's really just a straightforward subdivision, but we're working within the boundaries of that annotated code. So the property is primarily in a residential area. The proposal is for a residential subdivision. Within that proposal, we're not proposing any unique housing types. They're all permitted outright within any residential zone in the city of Sweet Home. The density level that's proposing is actually lower than the maximum density permitted in the low density and medium density. So we're actually well below the thresholds that would be required in just a standard residential zone. Items that I kind of just point out because I think they're unique and like to brag a little bit when subdivisions can be unique and creative and really kind of an enjoyable place for folks to live. But in this particular one, you'll see that there is an east-west road proposed. This east-west road would be a collector street, so it'll serve a larger volume of traffic as the sites to the east and west of this one further develop. This one really sets the pattern for that future development, and included in it on the southern portion that you'll notice in the plan set is a 12-foot wide multi-use path. So this is above and beyond what the code requires, but it's a great amenity for the community, especially that are very trails enthusiasts, and also fits into that recreational component that is stated in the development code. So we hope to serve the need for that recreational component and set just up a really great future multi-use trail system across the northern part of Sweet Home. Also included in the proposal is a couple tracks. The tracks themselves are pretty easy to explain. There is an existing residential driveway that serves the site to the north. This one currently encroaches on the property, this subject property. So this property owner is granting the one that is encroaching currently access to continue using their existing driveway. So these tracks will actually be granted to the abutting property owner for their continued use. A portion of it is just a leftover kind of right away from creating an intersection, which ends up being quite a nice place for future signage for the subdivision. And then the larger tract, tract D, to the north of the site is an existing pond, has some existing wetlands on it. And that will be set aside for open space, passive recreation, and just a place for folks to continue to enjoy. So as with a standard subdivision, the property owner and developer is proposing to improve public streets, which includes sidewalks, gutters, curb, stormwater drainage. It has a through circular street pattern, and it also has connections to undeveloped parcels or underdeveloped parcels to the north and to the east of the site. Also included, we talked a lot about lot size. So most of these are exceeding the minimum for what would be in a low density residential. Most of them are in excess of 8,000 square feet. And most of them meet that 80-foot lot frontage width, with an exception of a few that deviate. So by applying the plan development to the whole parcel, we hope to shorten the application in the future for if and when that 5 acres to the north develops. So we're applying that so that the developer has some development certainty about what size lots to create, and so that there's not multiple applications to come before you next time. I think the only other item I'll save until after you maybe talk about utilities, and you can circle back to it. I'll pass it over to Brian.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you, Laura. So my name is Brian Vendetta. She gets the creative portion of the presentation. I get the dry utility portion. So utilities are available as your staff stated. There is an existing sanitary sewer at the north end of Clark Mill Road. This subdivision proposes to extend it north and east through the development and stub it out to the east property boundary for future development on further to the east. There is also an existing water line at the intersection of Greenwood Drive and Clark Mill Road. There's a 2-inch line that extends north up Clark Mill Road. It's undersized for the development. So we understand that we will be improving that line to city standard and extending it through the development. There's a condition of approval that's proposed, and we've read it, and we are willing to accept it to loop that line back down to the east end of the property so that we don't have dead-end stagnant lines developed within this phase of the development. Stormwater. Stormwater is completely going to be created with the development. There are no developed storm drain systems within the neighborhood or the area. So we're proposing to take the stormwater to the north, to the direction of the South Santiam River. We'll take it through the future phased 5-acre development. We'll provide stormwater treatment in that phase and a detention pond. And we're proposing to outfall it into an existing ditch that eventually ends up north into the river. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. The utilities are all available. They are all of capacity to serve the development. The storm drain system that we're proposing will have capacity to serve this development and built-in capacity for the 5 acres to the north as well. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Laura.
Sounds good. So the only thing I just wanted to mention, and Angela already touched on it, there was a couple of proposed changes to the recommended conditions of approval. One of those was just the timing of the conditional use. So it takes a few years to actually construct the public improvements that go along with platting a subdivision. So we're just asking for that conditional use approval to ride essentially with that subdivision, because we'd hate to get the subdivision built and then come back before you and ask for approval for residential homes, since that's the purpose. So if you have any other questions about those suggested changes to the conditions, I'd love to have more detail on those. Otherwise, I'll just turn it over to the commission for questions.
Commission have any questions for our applicant? I have one just in the street construction itself. It shows with your 12-foot multi-use pathway and your planter strips, 10-foot travel paths, 5-foot bike lane. At that point, are you going to have no parking on the street? Is it going to be marked as no parking?
So the collector street that's running east and west through the south portion of our property will have no parking on the street. That's correct.
Okay.
The local streets interior to the lots will have parking on both sides.
Okay.
And that is typical of a collector / arterial street.
Right, and that'll be the 32-foot curb to curb interior.
That is
Street.
correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So in that regard, then there's no additional parking for those properties that abut the collector street? There's no like sort of communal parking lot if they have guests or visitors?
Yeah, so the development code already requires at least two
Two,
on-street
right.
parking spaces. I'm not sure how the city of Sweet Home reviews those, but typically they count the, 2 or 1 car garage in addition to stacking 2 cars in a driveway. So usually folks have abundance of parking on site. But in addition, there will be excess street parking available on the local streets should they need it. So it'll just be the few lots along the south that doesn't have it directly in front of theirs, but
Right.
there will be spaces provided within the subdivision, but nothing else in addition to that.
So,
Answer your question?
Well, it does. It just seems a little bit short or slim or I don't know what the right word is. I'm just thinking if I lived on that street, I had my 2 cars in the garage in front of the garage, and I'm having visitors. There's no place for them to park.
And I think one of the real big appeals of Sweet Home is the large lot sizes that are being created in this community opposed to others. I know Albany standards are quite a bit smaller and they don't allow for opportunities like RV parking. But with these larger lots and the home types that will probably be constructed there would be opportunities for additional parking above and beyond what the standard calls for.
correct,
If
but
there's a
that
desire.
would be speculation of what's being built on the lot.
Yeah, currently what
Okay.
we're proposing, it will meet the minimum, but there's always ability through design and the market forces to exceed standards.
If I could just really quickly refer to staff in regards to the parking, is our parking requirement include garage space or only the apron in front of the garage, I believe, as far as to off-street parking? It is the garage plus, it's worded that way. Okay.
In your narrative, it says all the lots in the subdivision would be provided access from Clark Mill Road. And then it says figures 2.2 and 2.5 denote Clark Mill Road is classified as a collector with good curbs, sidewalks, and gutters.
So that figure is actually referencing what's in the City of Sweet Home's transportation plan.
Okay.
So
It's planned for that. It's not constructed to that.
Is there any projection as far as this development to improve sections of Clark Mill? Or just to upsize the water line from Green River?
yeah, the development proposal does not require any off-street improvements. The developer is willing to increase the pipe size because it's advantageous to do so when it's initially constructed, but the amount of development that's occurring with this subdivision wouldn't require any off-street site improvements in addition to what's being proposed.
Anyone else have any questions for our applicants in regards to all 3 applications?
No.
I can see your clarification and wanting clarification in the lot widths as well. 60 versus 80, although most of yours, as you did state, are larger than the minimum required and at most are fairly close to 80 with the exceptions of a few mid 70s at points. So I do applaud you for that. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for your
We'll
time.
invite you back up for rebuttal at the end if need be.
Thank you.
All right, so at this time, if there's any proponent testimony, that is testimony wishing to speak in favor of the 3 applications, this would be the time to do so. Okay, if we have any opponent testimony, those wishing to speak in opposition of these 3 applications, this would be the time. It's okay.
Anyway,
Oh, wait, real quick, just have a seat, and then if you could state your name and address for the record.
Michelle Whitehead, 1367 Clark Mill Road,
Okay,
right there. So I wasn't one that got notified, but everybody else did. And so we all talked, everybody shared everything. We've been waiting for this for years because
Mhm.
Troy was gonna do this, I remember.
make sure, I'm sorry, make sure you're
So
addressing. the
11
microphone.
years ago,
Yeah.
12 years ago, whenever we were gonna do this, a long time ago. but now it's switched from where it was supposed to be way down a little bit, which is fine. I came from Vegas and LA, so I'm all for growth. But you have no sidewalks. You get people on that corner up at top. You have semis slamming on their brake. We need a signal there. If you're going to put 50 more homes after that circle that already has 3 cars per home, think about that. And you're doing a dump right at the top for a sewer, which we need. But like, come on, we need a signal up there and some crosswalks. People are getting killed, literally walking down that street. So you're going to add all these beautiful homes and you have no safety measure. You have one way in and one way out, up and down Clark Mill.
Yeah.
Bull crap. You're talking about Taco Bell and people you're talking about, that's a danger. That is danger right there.
But
Sorry, that's what everybody is upset about on that street. It's not the homes. It's about, we have done nothing to upgrade that side on either side except for Sunshine Industries, which was new, right? That they have a little bit, and we have Melcher Logging on the other side. So you have a lot of traffic, and you have all the way down at the end, you have that whatever landscaping, commercial grade, they start their trucks at 4 a.m., which I don't know why that was allowed on a residential street to start at 4 o'clock in the morning and you go all day. Dogs have been hit, cats have been hit, kids have been hit. You've got major traffic and that is the biggest thing. It's not the development we wanted, but you're creating major problems. Just this week, coming out of Ace Hardware, I watched a semi lock it up. If the car didn't swerve and the kid didn't pull back, he would have hit him.
Yeah.
You got to do something.
I am compassionate to your concerns.
That's
and I have to state really quick. So our concern here tonight is these 3 applications.
So
Your
those three-
concerns with the intersection. I know the intersection you speak of. We all know it. That is a very heavy-handed, hard conversation that has been going on with ODOT in regards to several intersections. ODOT's not the easiest to work with. We're working on it. You did mention that Sunshine has some expansion and their new stuff. As properties are developed along the street, they are required to bring it up to code. So even simple applications, I believe, can require.
I know
Side-
everybody that
Yep.
does anything on that street
Right.
has to do a setback, has to do this, has to
Yep.
do that. I get that. What I'm saying though, you're talking about the Taco Bell earlier and all that chaos. Wow, remember those fires? Whoa.
Yeah, but again,
So-
certain things are out of our control as far as this goes. We are here to look at the validity of the conditional use based on zoning. There are some things, your valid concerns. I'm not gonna talk you down from that. I've lived here 17 years. There's issues all over.
Mhm.
I would recommend maybe you addressing city council with this in regards. They tend to have a little more clout and power and control over situations like that as far as redirecting funding and focus.
Chair Parker?
yes.
If I may,
Yes.
a couple items on this. Sweet Home has inherited a lot of issues from forced annexations that have brought parts of the county into the city that were never built to city standard. And Clark Mill is a great example of that.
Yes, because behind me is that old mill property.
Right.
that we're having.
So, I mean, there were mills that were accessed along that street, so it's not historically always residential. It was originally built for industrial activity. So just give me a minute. The process for getting a road like that brought up to standard is typically development driven and driven by the owners of the property along the road. And so I just want to put it out there for any neighborhood within Sweet Home. People want their roads to be improved, to get the sidewalks, to get the curbs, to have better drainage, whatever utilities aren't present there. There is an option for doing that. It's called a local improvement district. And residents can drive that forward, can petition for those to be created to get those improvements put in. It's not a quick process, it's not an easy process, and it costs money, but it is a way to get that done. Mhm. Right. And so when and in conversations with the applicant here, you know, there's a lot of development that's coming for all the rest of this vacant property, and a lot of it is going to drive, you know, eventually the intent is for that collector to go all the way through so that it can connect and have it and right, so that it can have another outlet and not just the single one. And so eventually that's the intent.
Any plans besides the 47? Or is that?
So there, to my knowledge, there's no other crossing of the railroad tracks anywhere. So, and that's an issue with the railroad and right of ways and things like that.
On 47, because I know people live there and they complain all the time because of the radiator place and all the traffic. So what I'm saying is, oh, great. So like pretty much it's just highway.
Well, this is growing pains. I mean, this is what happens when you have a growing community. You are going to have streets that are going to need to be upsized. You are going to have to address this, and that's around the world. Things need to be done that way. So we will continue to get the development and to make those improvements where we can. And fortunately, we have now funding sources that are in place where we're going to be able to have more funding to throw at those things. We're always looking for more, and we're always looking for help especially from people who live along those streets wanting to do a local improvement district. That's an immense help to drive those improvements coming.
Fill in the ponds, the 3 ponds down by the river, which are.
You're talking about the city.
Properties over here. Yeah.
You're talking about the city property.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm,
And so is it all going to connect?
So
eventually, is that what your goal is eventually?
Those are all very different. Well, I would encourage you to become involved in we do have an update to our transportation system plan that is about to kick off, and there will be opportunities to volunteer for the board. You know, there's a, forgot what it's called. It's a board of folks that can give their input and be a part of that process.
Yeah, similar.
And so the intent, one of the goals of that project is to make sure that we have connectivity, not just Main Street, but we have an east-west collector that is north of that, so that people don't have to cross the tracks to get from one end to the other, and better flow. So all that is on the way, and I would encourage you to be a part of that too.
It's $400,000 in a brand new development. I want to make sure that
Of course.
I have
Right.
decent way to get in and out.
Yeah.
And
that's all being looked at, and this is not necessarily the appropriate time to describe everything that's being done, but I would be happy to meet with you any other time to help you understand what's going on.
We like the growth.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that. He's owned that property forever. He's been waiting and waiting and waiting because the economy took a big crap.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I've been waiting too. I was like, oh, maybe it's just never going to happen. So it's okay. We're just worried because when that circle came in, so much more traffic happened. There's so many more cars, and then we've got so many problems. And I'm like, you're putting in 50 more, which means there's 2 to 3 cars going up and down, plus the dump, plus everything else. That's going to be very crazy. So that's our main thing.
I hear you.
So it's a safety.
Yep.
A lot of traffic.
Thank you so much for coming down. We really do appreciate public input. All right, is there anybody else wishing to speak in either opposition? Opposition? Okay. Okay, is there anybody wishing to speak neutral testimony, not in favor or against? Go ahead and come on up.
Sign in, but
That's all right. You can do it on your way out. And again, after you have a seat, if you could just state your name and address, that would be great.
Scott Rice, I live at 3240 Zelkova Street. The question I've got, is there a stop sign where it's going to come, the feeder road's going to come out onto Clark Mill Road?
That would be
I don't know.
city
I didn't
engineer.
hear anything about it. I heard a T intersection, and then the T intersection got maybe eliminated.
Right.
Gonna be-
I'm not sure on that yet. It hasn't made it that far through the design and review phase for the detail of the traffic management and stop signs. Most of the time, the local streets have a stop sign as they enter the collector. This new collector will blend into the existing collector of Clark Mill. So I'm not sure yet. It may be that Zelkova will
currently,
have a stop.
does Zelkova currently have a stop sign?
No,
Because there's nowhere
no.
else to go.
And actually, the road curve of Zelkova infringes onto the private property of that southwest corner quite a bit, about 10, 12 feet or so. So there is not a determination on that yet.
A little bit
which-
early then. Is what
It's a
you're
little bit
saying.
early.
Okay.
Needs a
Wouldn't,
bit more thought to it.
I would assume that that at this point, with this development happening, Zelkova would probably get a stop sign and Clark Mill would go straight into the new street,
As the collector blending to the collector.
most likely.
Yes.
So, and then
It- a
you
lot-
mentioned that the property west, I think what you're talking about is this stub end of Clark Mill Road, which my property is adjacent to. You said that you'd ask that to be vacated. What does that mean?
So a vacation of a street is essentially returning the street back to where it came from. All streets are essentially dedicated from the private property that's adjacent to it. And so with this plan and the way the road is, that little stub of Clark Mill that extends to the north, it goes right up against some ponds, and just topographically, it's very unlikely that the road would ever be continued to the
It
north.
actually doesn't go up. Right, the pond's actually, so if you go to that corner,
So these are this right here is what I'm talking about. So if this is the right of way right here, and it ends right here, so it would have to be dedicated, some right of way would have to be dedicated for this to continue. But with the way the ground is here, it just and the way the property lines are, it's highly unlikely that road would ever continue. So what we're suggesting is this property up here needs to be given the option to connect through the future development, because it would be losing access to Clark Mill. And they've already given the property for the driveway, but if some future owner wanted to subdivide, they would need some sort of access beyond that driveway. But because you've given that driveway, and if you have an option for future access here, this part of Clark Mill is not necessary, and would never, nothing would ever happen to it. So if you do apply for a vacation, what it does is you basically divide the right of way down the middle, and half of it goes to the adjacent property on one side and half of it goes to the adjacent property on the other side.
so the other thing, my comment would be, you talked about that driveway, and it's you referred to it as a residence. That's not a residence, that's,
Right. There,
you guys know that.
yes, that Troy's made the negotiations with them.
Yeah.
Sorry, I did not mean to refer to it as a resident, but if it's with the zoning, if that activity was ever stopped, it would be unlikely that it would start up again, and it would be something more fitting with the zone. Right now is recreation commercial.
I think that's all the comments I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we'd invite our applicants to come back forward to address any rebuttals that they would like to speak on. Once again, if you could just state your name and address.
I'm Troy Cummins. My address is 64 Oak Terrace Drive, Lebanon, Oregon. I just wanted to take maybe a minute just to, if I may, to create a little context for kind of how we've gotten to where we are today. It is true that I have been an owner in the property for about 20 years. And during that time, I've had a variety of partners. But early on in the ownership of the property, we had really big plans. We had a big high-end community with a residence club and all sorts of programming and all sorts of stuff that really took a market that would drive users from second and third home ownership kind of markets. And when 2008 came along, that market essentially dried up. And so we were actually already on our way. We had the engineering all done for phase one. We had a sales center open. We had realtors that were working for us. We were taking reservations on lots when we realized something was going on, and that the economy was taking a pretty big turn. And like most developers at that moment, we chose to stop, kind of put everything on mothballs, and thank God we were able to just hang on to the property. So the property sat for a number of years, and then we attempted to restart the process of development. And we listed the property with multiple high-end brokers, commercial brokers, some of the best brokers really in this whole part of the state. We showed the property to many investment groups, a lot of people with a lot of money trying to get them to come to Sweet Home. I lost count of how many times that didn't work. To be honest with you, Sweet Home, although it's better today, in the past it's been a pretty tough thing to overcome. And I have said for a long time that I feel like the secret to the success of this property has to be that we have to, first of all, we have to establish a presence. We have to show that we're going to do something. We have to get the ball rolling. We have to get it started. It would have been nice if we would have done that 3 or 4 years ago, because if we had the first phase and maybe even the second phase done, we would have sold it all out. It'd be gone. But I was busy. I had a life to live. I was very involved with a lot of other things. I had partners who really had joint control over the decision-making process. So I had to, whatever I did, we had to agree on it. And so what happened over time is we sat and just fed this property and held on to it and fed it and fed it. All my partners got old. And I'm not too far from being 60 years old myself now, and all my partners 70 and 80 years old. And so in this last year, for the first time ever, I was able to successfully negotiate getting all the partners out of this. So now I have full control of the property, and I have 100% control of the property. This is the first time that's ever been true. And so my proposal to my ex-partners was, step back. Here's the terms I can offer you. I don't want to have any more partners. I think this can be done, but I think it needs to be done in a different way. I'm the local guy. I live in Lebanon. I care about Sweet Home. I care about I've gone to church in Sweet Home for most of 20 years. I care a lot about this community, but I felt like we were so busy shooting for the stars that we were never aiming at the right target. We were aiming too high. And then of course the markets change. The housing markets become much stronger. There's a housing shortage in Oregon. There's definitely a local shortage of decent housing inventory. I'm happy for that in regards to how that might help us now get this thing started. So when I finally got control of the property, I said to myself, I got to downscale this thing. We have to start with a small step. Let's do something that's more achievable, and let's get a presence started. And then as that happens, I'm fully aware of the fact that there are offsite improvements that will need to be done in order to support the kind of development that property could someday sustain. It'll take time to do that because it's a big property, and I don't even know if I'll be alive before the whole thing is developed, but we can get a lot done in the next 10 years if the economy holds together. So I am very aware that in future phases, there are things that are going to need to be done, and I'm not opposed to contributing to that process. I've been in discussions with the city for some time about a lot of different ideas, and but what I need to be able to do to be successful is this small first step. I have to be able to do this to get the first step off the ground, create some cash flow, and then we can look at in future phases traffic, sidewalks, the railroad crossing, a right-hand turn lane going from Clark Mill Road back onto the highway. These are all things that need to happen, maybe even signals. It's going to be really hard for me as a small developer to completely shoulder the cost of all those things with this property. That will be a challenge financially to do all that if I'm the only one who's expected to do it. So I'm hoping that with some cooperation with the city that we can come up with some ways we can partner and do that. It's in my best interest too, because if I want to see this property be successful, we want to create a really nice community within this community, it's going to be necessary. I'm the local guy, I'm not going anywhere. But this is the first time I've had control of the property. So now I'm trying to take that first baby step. So that's where I'm coming from.
Thank you for the background.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
You guys have any questions?
You guys have any questions for Troy?
Just that we appreciate your interest in Sweet Home and support of everything. And certainly the tax revenue from one big property of probably $2,000 versus 42 lots at $4,000 is going to be a real tax investment into our
Oh, yeah.
city. And that
Absolutely.
money can also help improve our streets and schools and
Absolutely.
parks and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know the city needs the tax base.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
can tell you, carrying the property taxes on this property on my own right now, it's a big number.
Yeah.
Even though the city only gets a part of it,
Yeah.
what I'm paying the county is a big number. And so I too need to have, get something established, and then we can start moving in that direction. And I want to see this happen. And I'm willing to devote the next 10 years of my life to do it. I think, I can't control the economy. A lot of the reason that we failed during the first go around was simply because the economy changed so drastically, and it's never really ever been what it was then. The second and third home markets, they're essentially gone for a place like Sweet Home. And even for most markets, we had a lot of really big players come and look at this property. And it was really hard to get somebody to write a check or to say yes. So we really gave it multiple attempts. So I feel like this is the way we have to do it. We have to get a small presence started, then we take it in small steps, and I think it can happen. I wish it would have happened 5 years ago, but this is the first time I've had total control, and I'm willing to give it my best.
So really quick, I have one question kind of in regards to the whole project in and of itself.
Sure.
Is this something that you're looking to develop to also do a lot of the building itself? Or are you hoping to get it to a stage and just basically offer the lots for sale?
Well, I haven't got that completely figured out yet.
Sure.
Okay, there's kind of two potential pathways. One is to build it out of pocket, take all the risk myself, which for a small guy, that's a lot to do. Even at 42 lots, we're talking about $2.5 million that somebody has to put up to do this. That's a big ask for me personally. The other option is that I find a builder who's willing to work with me. I have a builder who's very interested right now. We don't have a contract yet, but we're getting very close to sitting down to negotiate terms. That's a possibility as well. Do I personally want to build the houses myself? No, I don't. No, I've done a little bit of that. I've done enough to know that that's not what I want to do at my age and at this point in my life. And there is probably no scenario where I would be the one doing the actual house construction. There would be either one builder or there would be multiple builders that would be building on the property. And it's a big property. There's going to be multiple. There's probably 6 or 7 phases at least that could go on this property, and that is likely to it could change over time. It just kind of depends on what I can accomplish.
Sure.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions for Troy?
Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you. And thank you all for taking your evening to look at our applications. I appreciate it very much.
All right. With all the testimony behind us, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing for discussion amongst the Planning Commission. We will close the public hearing at 8:34. You guys have any questions? Do you want to just go through this one at a time? Conditional use, plan development, and then subdivision.
Yeah, so just a reminder to the commission, we do need to vote on these separately as well as consider the conditional use changes. for each one of those. So,
Conditions of approval.
or yeah, what did I say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So just as a reminder, as you make that discussion. So
Okay, so let's look at the conditional use permit, CU 2202, in its regards to the
So-
other applications.
Just as point of reference, when Troy and his partners 10 years ago came before us with the big development proposal, I think they also asked for an extended period. So I found it reasonable then. I find it reasonable now. I don't have a problem with that.
And did we modify our new code to grant that additional time? I can't remember. Just outright, did we extend that to 2 years
I'll
instead of the
look,
1
I
year?
can look and see. We're going to talk about that at our,
Yeah.
our
Next
second meeting.
Okay.
So
Yeah, so I don't think that's unreasonable at all. It's been
Yeah.
something we've been discussing.
I have no problem with the extension of the 2-year for the conditional use. And this also brings us closer, I guess this isn't a zoning change, it's just a conditional use, so in that regards. Nobody has any questions for staff or any other comment? I'll look for a motion.
This is just for the conditional use.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, I would move to approve application CU 22-02 as modified to include the additional findings, the findings in the staff report and the additional findings as noted by staff. And the conditions of approval listed in section 4 of the staff report, setting the 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and hereby direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize this decision.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Angela, for CU 2202, we'll go to you for a roll call vote.
okay, Commissioner Loman,
Yes.
Commissioner Journey,
Yes.
Commissioner Parker,
Yes.
Commissioner Melcher,
Yes.
and Commissioner Wood.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, we'll turn our attention at this point to PD 2201, plan development.
And just a reminder, this one, we had a request to modify condition approval number 4. So it's not just the width, minimum lot width. It was to take on the standards for the 2-family dwelling for all of it, for the single family and 2-family.
And that's just in the lot size, not in setbacks.
Well, it's the lot, it's,
Abutting street.
yeah, it's including all of the criteria for the 2-family.
Okay.
Sorry, I stuttered there.
That's okay.
So is how you stated that clear enough for
For the
You want me
record.
to?
For the record.
You want me to read what the request was?
I think that
Read it again, okay. So the request was the reduced lot width as part of the request. I'll just read what I have here and then I can modify it. So the proposal to allow single-family uses to be developed in accordance with the development standards of the Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.600440B includes the development standards such as minimum setback standards, lot coverage, and height in addition to minimum lot size and width. Same reasoning for the reduction in lot width applies to the other development standards. The standards for single and 2-family dwellings appear to be reversed. And this was the applicant's concern, is that the side and rear setbacks would also be too constraining for a single family dwelling with a 60-foot lot width. The same may also apply to coverage. The applicant feels for ease of administration, it would be easiest to Sweet Home Municipal Code 17.60040B standards to be both single family and 2-family. So if you look at the code, so right now it's the single family and 2-family. From the way I read it and I interpret it, they seem to be backwards. And so to apply the 2-family dwelling for the entire plan development instead of the mix, just doing the entire standard is one as the 2-family
This is
dwelling.
just one of our many little quirks we have in our existing code.
Exactly.
Similar to the residential code or the R1 zoning,
Yes, correct.
R1, 2, 3.
Mhm.
Well, I think with the basic lot sizes that were presented, I don't have an issue with it, accepting it the way it is. So if there's no other further discussion or questions for staff, look for a motion in regards to PD 2201.
But we don't have language for that.
They're not on the bottom of that.
Is there not in the back?
After,
I don't believe there is.
Right, Eva. I wonder if
I can wing it.
Transpose a little.
Sorry about that.
I would make a motion to approve application PD 22-01, which includes adopting the findings of facts listed in the staff report and the conditions of approval listed in section 4 with the modified lot width as noted by staff. Setting the 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of decision and direct staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize the decision. Did that include everything?
So it should be to the, you want to modify it so that it adheres to the standards of the 17.60040B standards.
As noted by Angela.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Turn it over to Angela for a roll call vote on PD 2201.
Okay. Commissioner Parker,
Yes.
Commissioner Wood,
Yes.
Commissioner Melcher,
Yes.
Commissioner Lohman,
Yes.
and Commissioner Journey.
Yeah.
Motion passes.
All right. Continue on to our last one. SD 2201 subdivision.
Okay, and so just a reminder of this one, staff would like to recommend removing condition of approval number 6. About the applicant shall provide a T intersection.
Correct.
There was the other option with the curve was
So
already,
adopting it as per the map
yes,
and the plat shown.
correct. And then the addition of condition, so if 6 is removed, it'll be condition of approval number 19. The future development portion of the property, the applicant shall provide an access option for the property to the west that is not owned by the applicant. And then an additional condition of approval, which will be number 20. If 6 is removed, the applicant will apply for the portion of Clark Mill Road north of the development to be vacated. Sorry, I'm losing my voice.
How do we add an access that's not owned by the applicant? What does that mean?
So, and we talked about this in our meeting with them earlier this week. Essentially, in the future phase, when they plat out the streets, they would make it so that one of the streets would butt up against that property line, giving that other property owner, if they choose to develop in the future, an access to a right of way.
Okay.
A street, essentially, the street could be continued onto that property if that property owner decided to do so.
So it's putting the street structure and all utilities in place.
So that other people can use it
Well,
at some
right,
point
well,
if they want to.
Because essentially, we're talking about landlocking that
Yeah.
that property by removing that right of way.
So does this one have any changes as to the expiration
No.
time frame and renewal?
No, they'd have the 2-year and the 4-year in the conditions.
Let me make a motion.
I was wondering if anybody had any other discussions, but I know we've had a lot of questions.
Jamie's got the expertise.
Jamie did well on that last one.
So I will move to approve application SD 22-01, including the conditions of approval listed in section 4 of the staff report, with the modifications of removing number 6, adding a new number 19 that requires the
Access option.
access to the property not owned by the applicant. Adopting the findings of facts listed in section 3 of the staff report, setting the 12-day appeal period from the date of the mailing of the decision, and hereby directs staff to prepare an order to be signed by the chair to memorialize the decision.
Okay, Commissioner Melcher, we also, if you all approve to add number 20, which is the vacation of, to vacate the upper portion of Clark Mill Road.
As amended by Angela.
All right, we have a motion and a second. SD 2201, go to Angela for a roll call vote.
Okay, Commissioner Loman,
Yes.
Commissioner Journey,
Yes.
Commissioner Parker,
Yes.
Commissioner Melcher,
Yes.
and Commissioner Wood.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Okay. Well, at that point, this concludes, no,
We still have,
Yeah.
we just have to talk about March 17th.
Oh.
after.
oh, I was gonna conclude the public. portion.
Oh, yes, okay.
Well,
Yeah.
you already closed the public hearing.
I did, but I was gonna let the audience know at
Oh.
this time. So at this time, we're gonna go ahead and just take care of some commission business. So the motions are done with and passed at this point. So you're free to go if you'd like. Thank you so much for coming. We are glad you all came.
Have to wait till I'm done. so. Yeah. You guys are done. Thank you, guys.
For the record, I love Taco Bell.
If they can sort out the
So,
drive-through, just
the-
eat it at home.
But
You
every
just
time
turn up.
I'm in Lebanon,
Sit down.
There you
Yeah, we need a, yes.
every time I'm in Lebanon, I want to swing by Taco Bell, but the line is too long.
Or they're closed because they're out of meat.
You know,
Run into that twice.
We get more meat out there.
No.
I will say I don't ever go to Taco Bell, but I'll tell you, it amazes me how much people how excited people are about the prospect of Taco Bell coming to town. Like our staff in particular.
We'll probably have that other taco place closed then. That'll
Taco
probably close.
time,
Oh.
it should have closed 10 years
There's no
ago.
For the record, I'm not a Taco Bell fan, so I haven't been jumping around like everybody else here. So
No, it's funny. Our finance director has been like offering to assist in our office. You know, whatever I need to do.
yeah,
Yeah,
it will be
that's-
nice.
That's the thing.
That part I go for.
Yeah.
Right.
Bigger thing to have an occupied
Eve-
space.
Even better, the building behind is going to be
I'm waiting
demolished
for
as
that to
well.
go.
Both of those vacant buildings will be
That's
demolished.
close, isn't it?
The demolition permit has already been submitted, and I think it's waiting on an asbestos.
Abatement.
There's an asbestos study that needs to be done on it first.
That can include both of them.
No, it's the same owner,
Same property owner.
same
different
property
tax
owner. It's a different lot, it's a different parcel, but they're both owned by the same person. And
That's why they're granting themselves.
he's indicated that he's gonna tear them both down, and I believe Taco Bell was requiring that as well as the city asking for it.
Well, just having a derelict building next to your new building, who would?
Right.
who
Nobody would want that.
there?
Safeway gonna put a gas station there?
Oh, they don't
He's
sit
looked
there.
into that, and I think, from what I'm told, Safeway is getting away from doing that,
I mean,
getting out of that business. So it's not clear what would go in back there.
Yeah,
but
they
there's-
had some speculation. I spoke with someone quite a while back, but it's not a bad
Yeah.
situation or a thing that they're proposing if they continue it.
I'm trying to convince him to let us move the historic train depot there and have a rail stop
Wouldn't
there.
that be neat?
I have a spot for that train depot.
I've got several spots for it, but this is
So-
one of them,
Oh,
whichever I can get moved forward.
Yeah.
Do you have a spot besides a dump or,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, no, it needs to be saved, but it's a spot not far from where it's at.
The question is, can it
So-
survive the journey?
That would be a tougher one. That would be a tougher one.
Yeah.
It wasn't treated super well getting to where it is now.
Doesn't look like, and
It
it's
wasn't
it's
professionally.
not any
relocated.
better, it's not any better for the time it's spent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you
That's
go.
kind of how they got it to
They
where it is
don't,
now.
that amount of duct tape does not exist.
Yeah. Yeah, it's brutal.
Sorry.
I remember removing it.
Yeah. Mm.
There, yeah.
Yeah, it does camo too. Make it go away.
Make it disappear.
So what do we have for staff updates on planning projects?
So, oh, go ahead, you
Oh.
first.
I was just gonna say, we'll go through the rest of the plan updates later, but our biggest thing is March 17th to talk about some of the code revisions. Now I gave you guys the Article 1. We did get Article 2 this week, and so I will get busy printing those out, and then you guys can come pick them up.
Okay.
He hasn't, I think, Article 3 by next week. There's another one in here, though, that I'm going to email this out to you guys. So as we're going through, we've had some circumstances lately that we've had to look at our current code and then switching into our new code to see if it fills the holes.
Yeah.
Commissioner Stevens actually brought one to us. So we have a provision, off-street parking and loading. So one of it is, so 17.72010, and this will be, these are some suggested edits, and I'll send this out to you, but for the residential accessory dwelling units, we've kind of had a little bit of a hole. So if a garage is converted into an ADU, then a garage or carport need to be constructed to replace the converted garage. Right now, there are some that are falling through the cracks that were existing ADUs, and so then they don't have a carport, they don't have a garage, and so that's one area. The other one is, well, and the reason why it falls through the cracks is because right now it says the construction or provision of additional floor area, seating capacity, or other expansion of existing building. It doesn't include remodel. So remodel, so if they just remodel it, they
So
don't
it's
have
got-
to,
it's
they don't
basically
have to provide a
referring-
garage or a carport.
It-
And that's where the one that Greg brought up to us and we looked it up.
Correct.
So our suggestion maybe would be to add remodel also, or another version
Instead
of
of
that.
just new construction.
Yeah, so I will email this out to you so you can kind of see what the language is, but that was something. The scope of it, so it's 17.44020 scope. And then under, and then this is an addition, I don't know, I have to go back and look at how I did this when I sent out the email, but 17.72010 residential accessory dwelling units. And I just put, my example is if a garage is converted to an ADU, then a garage or carport. So like I said, I'll email this so it'll be easier, but the rest of it we'll kind of work through the updates. I don't know what else.
I'm anxious to get that done because it's going to be so nice to be able,
Mhm.
especially
Yeah.
on something like this, to be able to incorporate our
Yeah.
green space into a subdivision and
My-
have something to stand on.
My biggest worry is that we keep on finding things that we
And
need
flow.
to include it, and at some point we're gonna have to say, no, just stop, and we'll add
Yeah.
those in at a later time. Like just today, we were talking about our sign code and how our sign code doesn't specifically call out digital signs, which are a really big thing now.
Yeah, and they need a dimming. factor,
Especially the-
candle power.
That's the issue that we came up because we were playing with our sign that we put in, and it was set to dim to 50% overnight, and we
Didn't-
thought it was still too bright, and then we realized no, it really is at 50% at
Yeah.
night, and
well,
so
it's like driving by the vet in Lebanon.
well, and so that
Yeah.
my concern is that okay, well the code says you're supposed to dim at 50%, but 50% of what?
Right.
It doesn't have any firm standard. It has a relative standard, which is rather frustrating to enforce.
Versus-
So
New truck headlights and my truck headlights.
yeah.
Well, it's like, we might need something specific, like if it's at this many lumens, then it needs to reduce to this,
Right.
something actually
Something
specific
measurable.
instead of just 50%.
Right.
Correct.
So we're gonna have to research some options there, but whether we make it in time for this or we have to do it at a later time.
Even if you
I don't
threw
know.
in some kind of just patchwork version of that,
It-
because that's coming, because Salem's already got not just digital billboards, but they're actually short video clips.
Oh yeah.
on
No,
the
we're capable of
billboards.
that right now, and so is
That's distracting.
the dentist office, and then there's at
Yeah.
the old Wells Fargo bank. There's a sign going in
Yeah.
there.
The school district, theirs has always been too bright and flashy.
Yeah.
It's always like,
What's
Yeah.
well, one of our staff pointed out that ironically, the one that is the best example of one that follows the rules is the Going Green marijuana dispensary.
yeah.
Theirs actually does give,
So-
it does.
Bright
give-
lights can
They don't
be
need
effective
it.
when you're under.
Well, no, they just want to follow the rules no matter what, because everybody already thinks the worst of them.
Yeah. Are they still en route to move?
They're supposed to. They got
Yeah, I don't know when they're gonna do it, but I mean, they've been, every once in a while he comes in and ask questions and different things. about-
Hopefully they do it before their conditional
Timeline
use
is up.
expires.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know they've been doing work on it.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Something.
They're tidying up around it for sure.
Yeah. But that's all the code updates we got.
And just, yes,
Mhm.
and just to give you a heads up also, the April meeting, we already have 4 applications. And I've had more conditional uses in the first 2 months of this year than I probably have the whole time I've lived
Yeah.
here. So they're all conditional uses for April also.
Mhm.
Will I be able to zoom in on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there any conditional uses for the 17th?
No, just the one, just the one that you
continuation.
continued as a continuation
Or,
to
yeah,
talk
I
about.
guess it's a continuation
Mhm.
conditional use, but yeah.
Building activity is going nuts. We're on track to match our total number of single family homes from last year by the end of March when it
So
comes to
first quarter.
building permits. So it's crazy. Yeah,
We
that's,
received 4 boxes of site plan reviews all at one time.
Oh,
Wow.
20 lots that are all being built at the same time.
Are these off
Almost.
Long Street?
No, they're that Mountain River subdivision at 45th
Oh,
and
yeah.
Behind
Right behind
Main.
for-
Yeah, yep.
Mhm.
For apartments.
So there's the builder that's doing them. He has the crews and he has the supplies. Got a big warehouse somewhere full of houses waiting to be assembled.
I think he's got
So-
another box or 2 for us.
Oh, and Foothill,
Yeah.
we haven't heard anything from
No,
them.
Sabley came in, but I didn't ask, he came in for another reason, and I didn't ask him about subdivision,
Yeah,
so.
so I don't know what their timeline is. Hopefully soon. So. And then we also got the building permit application for the memory care facility at
Oh, yeah.
at Wiley Creek. So that's going to be a huge improvement.
That'll be nice.
It's exciting. Lots of stuff coming in.
But that's
That'd be
separate.
real
There's, we did 2 or 3 different projects out there.
Well, there's, yeah,
did
the
a permit.
permit that we received was the memory care. There's also going to be, we're expecting a permit for the expansion of the
Of
assisted
Wiley
living.
Creek.
And then
there's the urgent
Samaritan will
care
have to apply also,
For their
put in a
urgent
permit
care.
application for their urgent care facility.
And their helipad.
And helipad,
Yeah. Lots of cool stuff happening.
Well,
Good stuff.
it's,
We need it
it's
here. We
well
need it.
over, it's well
We really
overdue.
need it.
Mm-hmm.
I know that one year, because I lost my shirt in 2008, 2009 on my division, but shortly after that, I think building permits only like went up to 38 building permits next year for the entire calendar year.
Mm-hmm.
So we're definitely seeing an upswing.
Oh, yeah.
And
They can keep fuel prices down.
really appreciate you guys when you notice loopholes, like, oh, here's
Right,
a
Joe?
loophole, let's try and
Hey,
fix
Joe.
it, or let's try and close this gap between these 2 ordinances. Because, there've been lots of people who haven't done that over the years, so it means a lot that you guys are taking the time and
We're,
the effort to put that
And you
together.
say-
it's rather self-interested, I will say, because we have to deal with it.
It makes our job easier too, to
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
fewer of those gray areas, so.
Right.
Right now, it's at that point where I find one and kind of went, oh, why can't I just be blind? You know?
Well, and like Blair stated earlier in the public meeting, is, we inherited a lot of this. Well, we inherited all of it.
Mhm.
And hopefully in our little stint, we can sanitize and
Right.
update it.
Right.
Kind of prepare it for the next person.
Yeah, it's helping people also to understand why their street is the way it is.
Right.
Ultimately, the way your house was built or your neighborhood was built, nobody paid for it at that time.
Yeah.
Whereas the other ones that see what you want, they paid for it.
Yeah.
And somebody's got to pay for it at some point.
I was pleased to see their multi-use path and their development. So it's a step in the right direction. The possible park space behind. I mean, one would have loved to have seen some green space interior to
Yeah, that
the
would've been nice.
subdivision.
Yeah. It'll look interior once the
Right,
future
once the
development
back
is done,
development
it'll
is
look
done, it will.
interior. But yeah.
Correct.
And Troy actually has talked to me about some of the riverfront property that he's got, that there's quite a bit of it that he has that's not
That's
that
part of
not
this.
that built, it's not part of this phase, but it's not that buildable.
Mhm.
And so he's looking at trying to figure out how it can be used and what can be done with it. And it may be that there will be some sort of riverfront park, or we're
Trails.
hoping to have a trail system
So,
And he's on board with our vision of having a trail system that goes from the city's property all the way to the dam.
yeah, and is some of that possible? I know we talked about it way back, and I've seen it done in other cities too, where people have deeded over properties to the city for parks and bikeways and things like that in exchange for waiving certain SDC fees.
Yeah.
Okay.
The parks SDC, as long as those projects that they're contributing toward are in our capital improvements plan, which can be amended at any time
Correct.
by the council, as long as that project is in there, they can qualify for a credit off of the applicable SDC. In this
Yeah.
case, it's the parks SDC, but the problem is the parks SDC is like the smallest of the charges that they
We
pay,
don't
so
have parks.
it doesn't give you as much bang for your buck.
We do have one now,
What's that?
Parks Department. Consists of one person.
No, it's got, I mean, Sean's kind of the lead in it, and then
Sure.
he's got his, we don't have a specific park.
Not a
but
whole
it's Public
department, but
Works,
yeah.
Parks crew,
Yeah.
so.
That parks funding is going to be a issue to be figured out in the future too.
Like library funding.
But the more, I mean, the more new homes, the more people we can bring in, the more parks will seem necessary and utilized
Mhm.
and be good,
Yep.
step by step.
Oh, that's what
Baby
we gotta
steps.
sell. We gotta sell the outside.
Well, at Taco Bell on Main Street, one step closer. Come on to Sweet Home, we got a Taco Bell.
If the healthcare doesn't do it, I guess Taco Bell.
Well, if you eat Taco Bell, by the time you
Then
get to the lake, you'll need the healthcare.
Next time we have a site visit from some no-name company, then we'll take them to Taco Bell.
Yeah, see, look at us. We're a big
After
city.
Primark.
There's my secret weapon right there.
That's right.
Oh, especially if they're East Coast, then Taco Bell is really fancy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So, do you guys have anything else for us? So with that, we'll go ahead and close the planning commission for March 3rd at 9:02.
Thank you for your patience tonight.
Good job.